My entitled friend breaks my phone, but then refuses to do anything to try and repair it or replace it. So I decided to get some revenge by literally giving him a taste of his own medicine by breaking his phone as well, sending him into a rage that I honestly find incredibly ironic. And at this point, I'm not sure if I'm the jerk or not, and I really just need to know what to do next. Here's how it happened. So I've been friends with Mark for around 6 years now. We met through school and have stayed close ever since then. Our friendship has always involved joking around, teasing, and messing around with each other just a little bit, but we've never had a serious conflict like this before. Last weekend, I was hanging out at Mark's place with a few mutual friends. We were drinking and talking and just having a normal night. Well, at some point, Mark picked up my phone from the table as some kind of joke and started pretending to toss it in the air. I immediately told him to stop and said I didn't find it funny. I asked him multiple times to put it down because my phone is new and I rely on it a lot. But he just laughed and said I was being dramatic and kept doing it anyways. Then out of nowhere, he actually dropped it. The phone hit the floor's screen first and shattered. It wouldn't even turn on afterwards. Suddenly, everybody went silent and I just stood there in shock. Mark then said that it was an accident and told me to calm down because it's just a phone. He didn't even apologize right away and didn't offer to pay for repairs or a replacement. I was so upset because I can't easily afford a new phone and I need it for work and everyday communication. Now, I tried to talk to him about it later that night, but he kept brushing it off and changing the subject, and it really felt like he didn't take my feelings seriously at all. Eventually, the situation turned into an argument. I was still angry and felt completely dismissed, and in a moment of frustration, I grabbed Mark's phone off the table and I threw it on the floor, the same way mine had already been broken. Well, his phone shattered too and he completely lost it. He started yelling and said I crossed a line and acted out of pure spite. He told me I was being immature and said that I owed him a new phone immediately. What really bothers me is that he still insists that my phone breaking was no big deal, and yet he expects full responsibility from me for his. Some of our friends say that I shouldn't have retaliated and that I made the situation worse, but others say that Mark deserved it since he ignored my boundaries and didn't take responsibility when he broke my phone first. And now my friend group is very tense, and Mark and I are definitely not speaking to each other. I feel bad about the way I reacted, but I also feel like I was pushed to that point for being disrespected and ignored. So seriously, am I the jerk for breaking his phone after he literally broke mine and refused to take responsibility for it? What should I do? Okay, I find this hilarious because, man, Mark definitely changed his tune pretty quickly, didn't he? At first he was like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, it's just a phone, calm down. But the second that crap happens to him, suddenly he wants a replacement. Suddenly he's pissed off and he's screaming at everybody. You did that out of spite, I can't believe you did that. And I just want to be like, yeah, I absolutely did it out of spite, you moron. You threw my phone on the ground and you broke it and you refused to take responsibility for it. So with that in mind, I don't really think you're the jerk here. If anything, this is just karma enacting its revenge on this guy. Because if he had just been more agreeable and said, oh yeah, I'll replace your phone, then all of this could have been avoided. And while I'm not saying that what you did is right, like I do think you probably could have handled this wrong, at the end of the day, I still completely understand where you're coming from. Because Mark was being a jerk, and I don't blame you for giving him a taste of his own medicine. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My grandfather tried to give away the family house, the same one that he literally never built or had anything to do with, but instead manipulated pretty much everybody in the family to make sure that he could give this off to his new wife. And it's honestly been a headache ever since he passed away, and I simply don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so yesterday, to start things off, I got a phone call that perfectly summarizes exactly what's going on. A woman I had never personally spoken to before called me up and asked if she could pay 250,000 euros instead of 320,000 euros. She said this calmly and politely, like she was negotiating a discount. And this woman is my grandfather's second wife. Now, for a bit of background, the house at the center of this story was not built or financed by my grandfather. It originally belonged to my great-grandparents on my grandmother's side. They built it themselves and paid for it entirely. It was a multi-family house with 3 apartments created through decades of work. And while they were alive, they made one thing very clear. They wanted the house to stay in the family. Now, my great-grandmother lived in one of the apartments, while my grandparents lived directly in the apartment above her. They were physically close and there was daily proximity. Like, this was not a distant family arrangement. My parents divorced when I was 1 year old, but despite that, my sister and I spent a lot of time with my great-grandmother. She was the kindest person I ever knew. When she passed away, I was 8 years old and my sister was 15, and we were old enough for real relationships to exist. Whenever my great-grandmother needed some rest, we were sent upstairs to my grandparents, but in reality, that only worked on paper. About 85% of the time, I was sent back downstairs almost immediately, while my sister was placed in front of the television. We were not welcomed, instead we were just managed. The moment my great-grandmother died, my paternal grandparents cut off all contact with us, and they did this immediately. No explanation, no gradual distancing, just total and absolute silence. My grandfather lived rent-free his entire adult life in that house. He never built it, he never financed it, he never passed anything forward. He cheated on my grandmother constantly, worked as a taxi driver, spent his time in a small garden outside the city, and treated his own family like an inconvenience. He hated his own son, my father. A few years before his death, after my grandmother had already passed away, my grandfather married a Ukrainian refugee who was 40 years younger than him and had 4 children. And then came his plan, which really started to rock the boat. He officially restructured the house from 3 apartments into 2, gifted one part to his new wife, and sold the other part to her as well. The intention was obvious, to transfer the entire property to her and make sure his own son received nothing. He even reestablished contact with my father for exactly one reason, to pressure him into giving up his remaining 6% share of the house. Once that was done, he disappeared again. No relationship, no reconciliation, absolutely nothing. He knew that he was dying. A notary was brought to his hospital bed, and he still refused to make peace with his only living son. Well, shortly after my grandfather passed away, which was 3 years ago, my father sued his stepmother over the house, and thankfully he had taken out legal insurance years earlier, so the case did not cost us much financially. And well, my father then died 1 year ago, but what he didn't account for were his legal mistakes. Because of those mistakes, his wife simply cannot keep the house. Legally, she now has to pay out roughly half of the property's value over to us, and that amount is 3,200 euros, which brings me back to yesterday. She called me, our first real conversation ever, and she asked if she could maybe just pay 250,000 euros instead. When I didn't immediately agree, she explained that she doesn't know how she's supposed to finance this at all. She said the legal fees are growing over her head, that the lawyers alone are draining what little money she has left, and that she simply doesn't have the funds. She told me she also has to think about her children and their future, how difficult this situation is for her. And yes, I understand that it's stressful for her, like I understand her fear, but what I cannot understand is the entitlement behind it. Her late husband lived rent-free his entire life in a house he did not build. He broke contact with his only 2 grandchildren the moment his mother-in-law passed away. He deliberately tried to rewrite an inheritance to benefit his much younger wife and her children while cutting out his only son and bloodline. And now, after all of that, the expectation seems to be that we should absorb the financial consequences of his choices, all because the situation has become inconvenient. I didn't create this legal mess, and my family didn't either. This is the result of a man who believed he could take everything, leave nothing behind, and never be held accountable at all. I'm so glad he didn't get his will. This guy was such a horrible, selfish person. And here's another reason why I cannot describe my grandfather as anything other than deeply disturbed. He crossed boundaries again and again, and he mistreated my sister inappropriately, if you know what I mean. He had multiple attempts to pursue my mother, repeatedly tried to get close to her against her will, and even attempted to gain access to the bathroom while she was showering. When my father was a child, he almost mistreated me as well. Thankfully, nothing worse happened because my grandmother came home in time. Even when I tried to connect with him, he didn't have any interest and never called back. The only time my grandfather ever tried to contact me directly was when he wanted something. He reached out because he wanted my mother to move into his house and take care of his first wife, the same woman who had always hated my mother. He framed it as a practical arrangement and even suggested that afterwards, they could sit down on a terrace and drink wine. Early in his life, his own sister and his own mother wanted no contact with him and eventually cut him out of their lives. But apparently, that entitlement didn't die with him, because this situation is going to be a headache probably for the rest of my life. Oh man, your grandfather sucks. He definitely left a mess before he passed away. I'm really sorry you're dealing with this, and honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would not give that lady a discount for a second. If anything, it's just the principle of the matter. This guy went out of his way to basically destroy this family home and be like, oh, I'm gonna get all of it, while also pretty much leaving you guys with nothing. Like, that really sucks. That's unfair for you and pretty much everyone in your family. So hopefully everybody can come to their senses and pay you the money that you're owed, because the state your grandfather left all of this in is completely ridiculous and absolutely unfair. Would I be the jerk for keeping the money from a ticket sale after my wife's friend backs out of going with us to a concert? Here's what's currently going on. Okay, so my wife, her friend, and I plan to go to a concert this past weekend, and for the sake of the story, I'll call her friend Julie. A few months ago, I bought 3 tickets all together, and Julie paid us back in cash for her ticket. Well, the day before the concert, Julie suddenly backed out, and by that point, I'd already picked up the physical tickets. At first, we told Julie that she could still come pick up her ticket if she wanted to sell it or do something with it, but you know what? But she didn't. She made no effort to retrieve it whatsoever. We even tried to find a buyer for her ourselves, but nothing worked out right away. Then after that, Julie told us to just keep the ticket or to throw it away. Now, I thought tossing it was a complete waste, so I decided to find a buyer myself and just sell it. I ended up doing the coordination, the messaging, and the logistics to make the sale happen. Now, here's where the conflict really kicks in. I think that I should keep the money from the sale because Julie abandoned the ticket and explicitly said to keep it or throw it away, and she made zero effort to handle it. But my wife thinks that keeping that money makes me the jerk and that I should give Julie the money, or at least offer it to her in the first place. So would I be the jerk if I kept the money? Because I honestly think I deserve it. Okay, in my opinion, the second Julie said, "Hey, keep the ticket or just throw it away. I don't want it." At that point, you have a free pass to do whatever you want. So selling it or throwing it away or lighting it on fire or whatever is your prerogative. And guess what? Selling it means that you get all the money. None of that money belongs to Julie because she literally gave it up to you guys. She didn't want to sell it herself and you guys were trying to figure it out, but she was too lazy to do anything. So no, you would not be the jerk. I don't think you would be the jerk at all for keeping that money, especially if she gave you a free pass and said that you can do whatever you want. Am I the jerk for insisting my roommate remove a keyed lock they installed on the inside of their bedroom door simply because in case of an emergency, she would need a key just to exit her room, which really does violate so many safety issues, it's not even funny. Here's what's going on. Okay, so I'm currently renting a 2-bedroom and my roommate is anxious about privacy. While I was at work, she installed a deadbolt that needs a key from the inside. Well, I told her that's not allowed in our lease and it's a safety violation because you should not be hunting for a key to exit quickly. But she said that doing that makes her feel secure. Well, my major point here is that safety is concerned, but she got pissed off as if I'm just asking to do it just to harm her. I then suggested a thumb turn lock or like a keypad that wouldn't get in the way, but she still refused. So I decided to escalate by telling the landlord, and the landlord gave her a lecture about safety. She doesn't understand that egress requirements exist so that people can leave quickly without tools. And that's not about feelings, it's literally a safety concern. There are plenty of secure, compliant options. Thumb turns, keypads, door bars that don't trap someone behind a key. I think she's in a refusal state because I'm not trying to be mean with her and simply because my concern has actual sense to it. It's literally the minimum for shared safety and lease compliance. So seriously, am I the jerk here? Like, I honestly don't want to lose my lease and I don't want to get in trouble because of her stupid actions. What should I do? Okay, dude, your roommate is an idiot. That is a massive fire hazard. Like, if she wants to have some kind of privacy, then literally anything besides what she has would make way more sense. You're telling me she needs a key to exit her room? That is backwards. I'm pretty sure you would want that on the other side. A thumb turn lock would be way more reasonable here. So no, you are not the jerk. This literally is a fire safety issue. And the fact that she's fighting you on that is just crazy. She's putting herself in danger for literally no reason. Am I the jerk for refusing to cover my coworker's shift after he literally was the reason I got sick? Here's what happened. Okay, so I work in a small office where we are constantly short-staffed. One of my coworkers is notorious for blasting the air conditioning year-round, even in the winter, despite multiple people asking him to stop because it makes them sick. And of course, management hasn't really enforced any rules about it. Well, last week he turned the air conditioning on full blast during a cold snap, and I ended up getting really sick with a fever and a sore throat. Now, here's the issue at hand. While I was out sick, he asked me if I could cover his shift this weekend because he really needs a break and has plans that he doesn't want to cancel. Well, when he asked me this, I said no, and I pointed out that I wouldn't even be sick if he hadn't cranked up the air conditioning after everyone asked him not to. He then got defensive and said I was being petty and that getting sick isn't his fault. So seriously, am I the jerk for saying no? Because honestly, this guy really pisses me off. Dude, there is no way in the world you would be the jerk. First of all, why is this guy having control over the air conditioning year-round? Shouldn't someone else be in charge of that, like building management or something like that? It shouldn't fall on just one person to manage it, right? Like, if anything, management is absolutely to blame for you getting sick. They're not enforcing the rules, which gives this idiot more leverage to be like, okay, let's turn the air conditioning on. Who cares if it's winter outside? Let's all get sick. So with that in mind, yeah, he's absolutely to blame for you getting sick. So no, you're not the jerk for shutting him down and saying no, because if he's gonna treat his coworkers like crap, he cannot expect them to come to bat for him when he needs some kind of favor. Am I the jerk for telling my family owing me money that they should not be going on vacation if they literally are in such dire straits financially? Because after I paid them 8,000 euros about 2 years ago, I'm honestly amazed that they would go on holiday and brag about it online. Because right now I'm very pissed off and I don't know what to do to get my money back. Here's how it all started. To start things out, 2 years ago, I got a big income. My aunt and uncle also have a restaurant and it's going pretty bad. Well, they approached me and asked me if I could give them 8,000 euros, and they said they will pay me back when they manage to sell the restaurant. Fast forward to 2 years later and the restaurant is still there. And every time I hear from them, it's always about how they're in a terrible situation. Then a week ago, I scrolled on Facebook and I saw them on holiday in Ibiza. For people owing me 8,000 euros and apparently in big trouble, I found it quite curious that they could afford to go to a place like that. So I messaged them asking how it's going. And they respond back by saying, "Oh, it's great. It's so nice to be on holiday after struggling for years." And that's great and all, but I'm like, okay, well, you owe me money. And I tell them that things don't seem that bad if they can go to Ibiza. They then tell me they saved money for a year to get a vacation, and it's the first one they've had in years. And look, I get it, but I also think about their restaurant and I'm like, okay, well, you owe me money. They also owe a crap ton of money to the state, and at some point they will just buy your restaurant for nothing, leaving you with no money at all and nothing to pay me back with. I said to them, this is just stupid to use all your savings on a vacation when you should put it in your restaurant. So I said all that and they just didn't take it well at all. They tell me that I have absolutely no business telling them what to do with their own money. I gave them money to the restaurant, and this is apparently not from the restaurant. This is from their personal account. But for me, it doesn't make any difference at all. The two are linked together. You should be using your personal savings into your struggling restaurant. They then say that I'm the jerk for making it weird when it's family, that they babysat me when I was 2 years old, and now I dare tell them what to do with their money. I then tell them they should be ashamed of needing money from a kid that they babysat. It goes on and becomes a really big fight, and then I say, okay, I expect my money back in the coming year. If they can go to Ibiza, clearly they're not starving, and they could deal with selling the restaurant now despite the debts. They say that I'm a complete disappointment and a cheap jerk. So seriously, am I? It's also important to note that there were no legal papers when I gave them those 8,000 euros. I was 21 years old and I just thought, why not? I can help out and I don't need the money right now. I deeply regret doing it, don't get me wrong, but it is what it is. I don't think I can do anything legally, even if we did agree it was a loan back then. What should I do? Okay, first off, hopefully this is a lesson that you will never repeat in the future, because holy crap, what do you mean you gave them 8,000 euros without anything in writing? That's a lot of money, dude. I don't care who you are. I could not drop 8,000 euros right now or anything close to that in American dollars and still walk around and be like, oh yeah, they'll pay me back in good faith, because then stuff like this happens. You fast forward and you see the people you loaned the money to are doing just fine going on a holiday. Meanwhile, you're sitting there with 8,000 less dollars in your bank account wondering what the crap just happened. So no, you're not the jerk for reminding them that they owe you money, that they literally took advantage of the 21-year-old version of yourself just to get some money out of you for their supposed struggling restaurant, which I'm convinced is just a manipulation tactic they use to get money out of the family. But truly, I don't think you're ever getting that money back. I think you're kind of like up a creek without a paddle, because if they give it back at this point, especially after this argument, it honestly will be a miracle. Am I the jerk for not covering my coworker's shift, even though she said it was an emergency, which I later found out to be a complete lie? Because right now she is really making me feel guilty and is practically turning my coworkers against me because of this, and I really just don't know what to do in return. Here's what's currently going on. Okay, so I work part-time at a restaurant while also going to school. It's already kind of a lot balancing work and classes, but I make it work somehow. I usually work weekends and I almost never call in sick or ask for any days off. Last week, I finally had a Saturday free. And we're talking like actually free. No work, no school, literally nothing. I even told my manager earlier in the week that I wasn't available just in case, and he said it was fine. Well, Friday night, one of my coworkers texts me asking if I can cover her shift on Saturday. I then ask her why, and she just says that she has an emergency and really needs someone. I then asked if it was like a family or medical, but like not asking any details, and she just responded by saying that it was personal stuff. Well, I then told her I'm sorry, but I couldn't because I already made plans, and I really needed the day off, but she kept pushing me and saying that she never gets help from anyone and that if I don't cover, she might get in trouble. Well, when she said that, I felt kind of bad, but even still, I said no. Then Saturday morning, I see her Instagram story. She's at a brunch with friends, like full outfits, mimosas, smiling, all of that. Meanwhile, another coworker texts me saying that she's mad at me and telling people that I don't help anyone out. Later that day, she texts me again saying that I embarrassed her and that just because she didn't tell me her emergency doesn't mean it wasn't wasn't real. I didn't reply because I didn't want to start drama and I was already so annoyed. And now at work, some coworkers are being cold and one of them said, "Oh, you could have just helped her out." And I feel like I'm being guilted for having boundaries, but also I don't know if I was too harsh about it. So seriously, am I the jerk here? Because I don't know what to do. Okay, if I was in your shoes, I would print off pretty much everything from her Instagram story and I would bring it into work and I'd be like, "Oh, you mean this emergency?" And I would print off those pictures and show her like smiling and laughing and drinking mimosas and then essentially hold her feet to the fire and be like, "Yeah, you didn't have an emergency, idiot. You literally lied to me and the rest of my coworkers and somehow tried to blame it on me." And that's not okay in my opinion. Because guess what? This isn't okay. If you don't want to cover for someone, then congratulations, you don't have to do it. Someone else can cover because you're not the only other person that works there. So no, you're not the jerk. You didn't do anything wrong. Your coworker clearly lied about having some kind of emergency and is now basically lying to you and trying to make it seem like you're the one with the problem instead of her. Which, if I was in your shoes, I would be correcting that publicly so fast because absolutely nobody at work has the right to talk to you like that regardless of the circumstances. My entitled sister-in-law demands that we don't post any of our wedding photos online, as she said she was unhappy with the way she looked and that she felt she looked like a fat pig. So, as a solution, I cropped her out of all of our wedding photos so that we could still post about our wedding while also keeping my sister-in-law out of the picture. But now, as a result, she's freaking out on us, claiming that we're trying to erase her from the memory of our wedding. And with everybody slowly turning against me and my wife, I'm now left wondering if I might be the jerk in this situation. Because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my wife and I recently got married and it was amazing. The wedding was set at a riverside farm, and so we had photo shoots outside on the fields before the ceremony. We started taking photos at around noon, and my sister-in-law was one of the bridesmaids. My sister-in-law has always been a negative person ever since I met her, and is always trying to make small judgmental comments, while my wife is an incredibly kind person. They have very different personalities, so I never questioned why they weren't close, and assumed that my sister-in-law was included in her group of bridesmaids to appease my wife's parents. Because my sister-in-law and my wife have never been very close, she was at the end of the line of bridesmaids and usually was at the edges of group photos. While taking the photos, my sister-in-law was the only one complaining about things like the sunny weather and how her dress was absorbing the heat. I don't know much about dresses, but it was maybe about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Most people in the photo shoot group ignored her comments, and it wasn't an issue for the rest of the day. We ended up getting the photos of both the shoot and the ceremony from the photographer 3 weeks after the wedding. We promptly sent the photos to the people in the photo shoot and told them that we planned on using the photos on social media. Now, most people thanked us for the photos, but my sister-in-law called my wife and was very angry, yelling that she looked like a fat pig in every photo and demanded that we not use any of the photos with her in them. For context, my sister-in-law is bigger than my wife, but not to an extreme extent. She doesn't look unhealthy, and I've never heard her have any body issues before, but admittedly, I wouldn't know much about it. In the wedding photos, she doesn't really look any different from her normal self. My wife tried to reason with her, saying she looks just as pretty as everyone else, but my sister-in-law did not want to hear it. She reiterated that if we used any photo of her on social media, then she would never speak to us again and would put us on blast. My wife was really hurt by her sister's outburst, and I was very bothered that she thought she could tell us what to do with our special moment. Well, this is where I might be the jerk in this situation. I decided that if she had that much of a problem with this, then she didn't need to be in any of the photos. So I cropped her out and I posted those versions to social media. I thought it would be fine, and it was easy since she was at the edge anyways. Well, after posting, she then called me even angrier than before and accused me of trying to erase her from the memory of the wedding. I told her I only did it to accommodate her wishes while also getting to use my own wedding photos. My sister-in-law hasn't talked to us in a week, and my wife's parents are mad at us for upsetting my sister-in-law. While my wife is on my side, she thinks that I could have been more mature about it. But I don't think I did anything wrong, and I accommodated her already unreasonable request. So am I the jerk for cropping her out of my wedding photos? What should I do? No, you're not the jerk at all, because I would have done the exact same thing. If she doesn't like the photos and she thinks she looks like a fat pig, as she put it, then cropping her out of your photos, in my opinion, is the only solution. For you to be denied the right to post your own wedding photos on social media or put them wherever you want comment, all because of your sister-in-law acting like a very selfish individual, in my opinion, is incredibly selfish and unbelievably toxic. She's trying to control your wedding photos and is like, oh wow, if you post these, I will never talk to you again. So in my opinion, your solution makes total sense. She really thinks that she looks bad in these photos, then fine, I'll just crop you out and post them without you in it. But it's so convenient that because you did that, she then fires back and says, you're trying to erase me from the memory of the wedding. But it's like, hang on, which one is it? If you're going to be offended that you're in the wedding photos and start demanding that none of this get posted, then you have no right to get upset when someone posts it without you in it. Like, this idiot wants to try and play both sides of the fence and still get offended no matter what you do. Like, that is so selfish in my opinion, especially when it comes to your photos of your wedding day. So in my opinion, I think you are well within your right to do whatever you want with those photos. And it's so funny to me that the parents are stepping in and being like, wow, why did you upset your sister-in-law? Because it's proof right there that they would rather dance around the issue and try to avoid approaching the sister-in-law instead of calling her out on her awful behavior, because the way she's acting is completely inappropriate, and I think you're well within your right to edit her out. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I overreacting by saying that my stepson owes me an apology for the way he treated me and my wife? Because right now, my wife is requesting that I be the bigger person and just forgive him. But at this point, I'm still so angry at the way he treated us that I seriously now don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my stepson, who's 20 years old, graduated high school just over a year ago. February of last year, my wife and I helped him get a loan for a truck, which was about $7,000. At the end of May or early June, he packs his things and moves out to live with his girlfriend, with whom he knows we are not overly fond of. And this is all without ever telling us that he's leaving, and we find out he's gone when we both get home from work. He then refuses to return any phone calls at any time, because apparently he's too busy, but somehow will immediately respond to text messages almost every time. I try to call him when I realize that he hasn't just taken his things, but some of mine as well. But when I do, I get told that he can't talk as he's too busy, but then spends the next 2 hours immediately responding to what could have been handled in a 5-minute phone call. By this point, I'm angry, so I said, fine, you will need me long before I need you. And I decided to stop initiating contact. And for the record, I've been with his mom for 8 years, so I've been in his life. At the end of last July, my aunt passed from cancer, but even then, I still did not get a single word from the boy. Now, my dad and I were very close. My stepson knows this and knows my father very well. And at the end of November, my dad passed away and left everything to me. But once again, there is still radio silence. 2 weeks to the day after my dad passes, my last remaining aunt passes away with cancer, and I still don't hear anything from him. At the end of this last May, my stepdaughter is graduating from the 8th grade, and my father-in-law is coming into town from 4 states away. The boy and his girlfriend show up at my dad's house while I'm at work because somehow they know we've been remodeling and planning to move in there, so he can't claim ignorance to dad passing away because they literally knew to look for us. The neighbors call me and they let me know that they are at the house. So I call and I tell them that they can leave now or I can have them arrested for trespassing, but they are not to be there if I or my wife are not there. So apparently they're here for the graduation and it's really tense, but things go fairly smoothly. And after graduation, they go back to their place maybe 3 hours away from us. 2 weeks ago, the boy calls his mom to tell her that he and his girlfriend have split up, but they are still living together and she's moved another guy in with them. And he wants to know if we'll make a truck payment for him. Oh, and he also told us that his truck has been broken down with a ruptured brake line for almost 2 months. I said that we are not making a payment unless I have some kind of collateral to ensure that he will pay us back, because he has also quit his job at the same time they came down for the graduation and has been unemployed ever since. A few days pass and he asked if he can come back home. My wife agrees to letting him come back, and I make some phone calls to borrow a car trailer and a 1-ton pickup to haul him home. And trust me, he knows that I'm not happy, so it is literally a 3-hour ride in complete silence. Well, last night he comes in after spending some time with his dad's family, whom he had treated the same way, where he totally cut contact with them until he wanted something, and he is now telling the wife and I about some things that they had talked about. And honestly, I just tuned out of the conversation. After he leaves the room, she turns to me and starts trying to discuss some of it, and I said, I'm sorry, I tuned it all out. I'm still very upset with him, and I don't see that ending anytime soon. And in order to keep my cool, I had tuned out the conversation with him. She then asked me to do something, which I view as a very unfair thing to ask of me. She says, well, can't you just forgive forgive him for me? I told her that's a tall order, and I don't think it's fair to ask me, since he has not once apologized for all the lies he told, the failure to even say he was sorry to hear that my dad or either of my aunts passed away, as well as showing up at my dad's house, or for that matter, a thank you for coming and getting him and his things, despite how angry I am with him. And I also said, why is it that you feel it's okay to ask that of me, but not okay for you to talk to him about how he's treated all of us and suggest an apology? I've had my job 3 years, and when the guys at work heard what had happened to my dad, they gave us a card, but I literally live with this kid and I couldn't even get a text message. So am I overreacting in this situation? What should I do? Oh man, this one really upsets me. The son in this story is absolutely in the wrong, and your wife is absolutely incorrect in my opinion if she thinks you're the one that needs to initiate any kind of forgiveness that might be going on. Your stepson literally should be on his hands and knees thanking you and your wife for even letting him back in the house, especially after the way he ghosted you and your wife and left literally all of a sudden overnight. Because the truth of the matter is that he only called you up because he needed something, not because he cared about you or he was sorry about your family passing away. It literally all came down to the fact that he wanted something out of you and he knew he could get it probably through his mom instead of you. His behavior in my opinion is incredibly spoiled and it's super selfish. Seriously, it's just so uncalled for. And I think the original poster hit the nail on the head. Why should you just automatically forgive him if he hasn't taken any steps to try and be forgiven? Why is that on your back and not his? He's the one that wronged literally the entire family, not you. You literally bent over backwards to make sure this kid's needs were met, and then he runs off with his girlfriend and then begs to come back. So no, I don't think you're overreacting for demanding an apology, because truly, I think your stepson sounds like a spoiled brat. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for forcing people to move out of my seats at a demolition derby, especially after I reserved them 2 weeks in advance? Because after they refused to move and I got the cops involved to make them move, they said that I'm a disgusting individual and that I'm also a terrible person. And now it's left me wondering if I did something wrong or if I might be in the right for deciding to stand up for myself. Here's what happened. Okay, so let's get right down to it, shall we? I bought 5 tickets 2 weeks ago for seats at the demolition derby happening near us. And when you buy your tickets online, you must choose your own seats. And I specifically got aisle tickets, so it would be easier to leave in case my 2-year-old got fussy. Well, the event started at 6 o'clock, but that includes the opening ceremony and some little kid races, so we waited an hour to head in because of that, and the line was exceedingly long, so we decided to occupy our toddler with other attractions until the real demolition derby started. Well, when we go in, we see that all of my seats are taken. We politely asked them to leave, and every single one of them told us that they had already been there for an hour, and that someone was in their spot, so we need to go find new ones. But then their story changed by saying that they double sold the tickets for this spot. We asked them politely to please move or we would get security multiple times, but they just kept saying, "Go ahead, we're not moving." So I did exactly that and I grabbed security. We apologized to security and explained the situation, and they told us we were going to get our seats and not to apologize for standing up for ourselves, and so they followed us to ensure that these people would move. Well, when we came along with security, they literally could not believe it, and they started calling us disgusting, saying things like, "I hope you're happy, you are all just terrible people." We responded that they should take it up with the ticket people since I had receipts that I bought them 2 weeks ahead of time, and the cop did ask to see my tickets and send the date of my email for proof of purchase. And you know what? I was going to get the seat that I paid for. If they had just gotten up the first time when we asked politely, they wouldn't be embarrassed with the cops standing right there. The people complained to the cops, and so the cops told them to show them their tickets, and they would happily do the same to whoever is sitting in their spot. But instead, they stormed off saying that it wasn't fair. Now, you could get tickets day of for standing room only, but even those sell out really fast. And you know what? With all things considered, my son had the best time. There were multiple fires in the engines, and almost all the cars were totaled, and you could smell the burning radiators from the stands. I kind of feel like a jerk, but I don't actually feel bad about it. Had I been at a professional sporting event, concert, or a theater production, I definitely would have done the same thing. So now I turn to the internet. Was I the jerk for making these people move? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk. These people not only stole your seats, but they also tried to make up these bogus excuses as to why they stole the seats. Like they had an excuse for literally anything you could ask them. And they did all of that in some desperate hope that you would just walk away, that you would accept defeat and stand in the back like these people probably paid for. And in my opinion, I cannot stand people who act like this. They go in there and they take the nearest seat, and then they just pray that nobody shows up and they get to reap the reward of sitting in that spot. It's all super toxic, and I just can't stand when people do this. So no, you didn't do anything wrong. These people are the real disgusting individuals who really are terrible people for trying to steal your tickets. You reserved them 2 weeks in advance in hopes that you would have a good spot to watch the event. So for them to act like they're somehow entitled to it, in my opinion, is completely disgusting. An entitled customer tries to argue with me over $2 when it comes to buying a salad bowl. And after dealing with customers like this all the time, I'm honestly so sick of these petty complaints that I really hope people like this don't come in anytime soon. Here's what happened. So I work at a thrift store, and the way that we price our items is by category. For example, if you bought a jigsaw puzzle or a stand mixer at a regular store, they would most likely ring up as jigsaw puzzle and stand mixer respectively. But at my store, they would ring up as toys and kitchen instead. As a result, we get a lot of people switching tags from one item to another. Now, we can't explicitly say that the person that bought something with a wrong tag to the register is the one that did it. We say, "I'm sorry, but the tag that is on this item is incorrect. The actual price is this amount." Or we'll say something like, "We have to send it to the back to get a new tag," or even suggesting that we call someone to get the correct price. Now, I am a lead cashier, and I am able to give a price to something on the spot, as long as the customer doesn't mind it being non-returnable. Well, here we have this customer with a salad bowl with a wrong tag, and the cashier doesn't know the real price, as the tag on it says $2.99. When I get up to the front, I explain to the woman that the price is incorrect, and that I know we don't sell our salad bowls at $2.99 unless they are plastic or something like that, and that I could instead sell it to her for $4.99. Well, when I said that, she was definitely not happy with me, and explained that there were tons of salad bowls back there that were this price, and that we always are doing this to her, that every time she comes in to buy something, we change the price of something that she is buying, which really made me want to say to her that if we are always changing the price on stuff that you buy, maybe it's because you are switching the tags. Now, I didn't actually say this, but it does kind of seem suspicious, right? Well, when she said that, I just smiled at her, and I explained that we are not changing the price because of her, but because instead someone switched the tags on her items, and that the tag is incorrect. This is just our store policy, and that I could call a manager if she really wanted me to. Well, when I said that, she said no, that it was the fact that we are changing the price, even though we priced it at $2.99, and that she would have bought it if it was $2 or even $12. Well, I explained to her again that we don't price our salad bowls at $2.99, and that this was just wrong, and that I was giving her a correct price based on our pricing range. She ended up buying the bowl, and when I had time, I went to our kitchen aisle and I looked at the prices on each of our salad bowls to look for any of the ones that are labeled as $2.99. Well, every single salad bowl, bigger or smaller than the one she bought, was literally $6.99, and hers was the fanciest one, so I think the $4.99 bowl was a great deal. But regardless, I'm so tired of customers trying to argue with me about prices that seriously, it really wears me down, and it's super annoying. Yeah, this one really kind of strikes a chord with me, because I've dealt with something like this similar when I worked retail. Like seriously, it seems like sometimes the customer is unwilling to listen to whatever you're saying, and will get hung up on a $2 difference that they are completely wrong about. And I'm sure if you had more time on your hands, you probably would have loved nothing more than going back there with her and having her show you what the prices actually are for the bowls. Because chances are the price was definitely not for $2.99, and she is most likely the one who's switching it around behind your back. Am I the jerk for leaving my friend while we were on vacation after she decided to go off and spend the night with a couple of guys that she just met that night? Because now I'm finding out that something bad happened to my friend, and right now I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong for deciding to leave. Here's what happened. My friend and I are 22-year-old females, and we drove to our vacation in North Carolina, and the trip started off rough, as my friend was being very short-tempered and rude for the duration of the trip. The night before I left, we went out drinking. My friend decided to befriend a group of guys and bar hop with them. I reluctantly followed, as the hotel room was in her name, and she had the only key, and I did not want to just leave her out with them. Eventually, she got cut off at one of the bars we were at, and as we walked back to the hotel, she's walking with these two random guys. And mind you, we both have boyfriends. I tell her I am not going back to the hotel with these guys, and I will find a way to get my own room if I really need to. She then says that she will just go hang out with the guys somewhere else, and mentions that she has lost the hotel key. I obviously tried tirelessly to convince her not to leave with the guys and to just ditch them. I tried to get her to go to the front desk and get a new room key, as her name was the only name for the room, so I couldn't do it. I tried so hard, but there was just no convincing her at this point. So the last I see of her is that she is at the valet trying to get her car. I then call my grandmother and I cry on the phone to her explaining the situation. Then I fall asleep on a bench outside the hotel, seeing as I can't get a room key myself. My grandma was able to call the hotel for me and somehow talk them into getting me a key. I then slept for a few hours, and when I woke up, I booked a flight home. I no longer felt safe with my friend because of the situation I was put in. I looked at her location, and she was an hour and a half away at what looked like a military base. I texted my friend and I let her know I was not okay with anything that happened, and I did not feel comfortable being with her the duration of the trip or driving home with her, so I decided to fly back that day. Well, she woke up and answered saying that she had no idea where she was at and didn't know what happened the night before, and she didn't know how she was going to get back to the hotel. But by this time, I was already at the airport about to board, and by the time I am off my plane, she had blocked me on everything. Well, today I wake up and I have text messages and calls from an investigator saying that he works for NCIS and that there was a case reported by my friend. He wanted to set up an interview so that I could better help them understand what happened that night. Now, my friend has not talked to me at all. However, she has talked to a mutual friend of ours saying that something bad happened and that she's been at the hospital for 2 days, but it has not even been 48 hours since we were at the bars together. So am I the jerk for leaving? If so, what should I do differently? And what should I do about this situation moving forward? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk. You clearly dodged a very sketchy situation, and you absolutely did the right thing by not getting involved in what your friend was doing. Like, I can only imagine the worst of what actually happened at that military base, but just think what could have happened to you if you decided to go along with her. If you decided not to stand your ground and try to be there for her in some kind of way. Like, your gut instinct in that situation absolutely probably saved your life, because your friend is out of her mind if she thought it was a good idea to go bar hopping with guys that she's never met. Like, those are the prime suspects that would harm her, and clearly something did happen. And you know what? That honestly is not your fault. It's an awful situation, don't get me wrong. Like, this really is very unfortunate, and I really do feel bad for your friend. But at the end of the day, this is literally her own fault. This does not fall on your shoulders in the slightest, and I know if I was in your shoes, I definitely would have left the next day as well. My entitled dad always gets everybody sick anytime he gets sick, and as someone with chronic illness as well as a bad immune system, I'm seriously at my breaking point, as I simply cannot get sick again because of this man, despite my desperate pleadings that he not only stay away from me, but also take my health more seriously. Here's what happened. Okay, so last year, my dad got the flu, and he refused to quarantine himself, and then made us drive in the car with him with no AC on. As a result, we all got the flu, and it was a horrible experience. But he didn't seem bothered by the fact that he got literally everybody sick. In 2022, he went to Europe for work, and when he came back, we asked him to quarantine because it was peak COVID. Well, he said he didn't feel sick and refused to wear a mask, and he hugged all of us when he arrived, and then for the next 2 days literally touched everything in the house. And after that, as you can probably guess, he then tested positive for COVID. Now, luckily, nobody got sick, but we did fight with him because we asked him to take precautions and he completely refused to do so. He's now been feeling sick ever since Monday, and I asked him 5 times to get a COVID test and stay away from me because I was sick 2 weeks ago and I don't want to miss work again. I also have chronic health issues, so I don't need another illness on top of what I already have. Well, Friday, he decides to inform me that he knew one of his coworkers has COVID and he interacted with him days ago. He refused to quarantine and touched everything in the kitchen last week. He spent hours with my mom and sister in the car, continued to go to work, and even went to a Broadway show while feeling sick. He coughed everywhere because of his reflux and never even covered his mouth. And even still, he wouldn't get the COVID test. He drove in my car when I asked him not to because I don't want to get contaminated. Then today, he finally took the test and he tested positive for COVID, and he was laughing about it the entire time. This whole week, I've tried to stay away from him. I've tried to wash my hands, eat separately, and I wore a mask while my whole family made fun of me. I am livid because I have a horrendous immune system, and I don't understand how hard it is for him to comprehend that I don't want to get sick. So I'm quarantining myself because he refuses to do so. But even then, I'm starting to develop a fever and a headache now. Truly, I'm at a loss on how to deal with him. Sometimes he acknowledges that he should have been more careful, but then he just does it again. He told me that he barely feels sick and doesn't understand that while he barely feels sick, I may get COVID and have much worse symptoms due to my health issues. I'm honestly at such a loss because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Your dad and your family are are super disrespectful. First of all, I'm sure that they know you don't have a good immune system. I'm sure this is not some kind of secret that you're keeping from them, and that they are well informed that you really should not be getting sick. So the fact that he still did this and was coughing everywhere and was refusing to get a COVID test or quarantine or anything like that is a massive sign that he literally just does not care. He thinks that this is just a joke. Meanwhile, you're the one who's gonna have to pay for it. And that is so unfair for you. Literally, you're just trying to live a healthy life and you're trying to stay out of taking more sick days from work. And here he is just walking around being like, oh, I feel fine. There's nothing wrong with me. And just completely disrespecting your space as well as your health. So in my opinion, I think it might be time to be very blunt with him and tell him straight up, listen, when you don't quarantine, I get sick. And if I get sick, then my life is at risk. Either he's in denial for some reason that no, you're not actually that sick, or he's just completely incompetent about what it means to have a bad immune system. But either way, his behavior is absolutely disgusting. And I know if I was in your shoes, I would be looking to probably move out, especially if I had chronic health issues that literally jeopardize my life on a daily basis. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled parents have spent a lifetime treating me like the lesser son, all because they simply love my older brother more than me. But after my older brother announced that he is not moving back in with them after college, they lost their minds in a way that I've never seen before, and I'm honestly still shocked and I now don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I've been away for 2 years, and I kinda expected that I'd be back to post one last time in 2024 because my brother went for a 4-year bachelor's degree, much like I am currently doing. For those who remember my previous posts, I'm the guy whose parents basically got their butts verbally handed to them by the family for bad favoritism towards my older brother. Crap really hit the fan on my 18th birthday because my parents barely put any effort into it and went all out on my brother's 18th birthday in 2020 during the pandemic. They even managed to get a DJ for the party, and then they presented him with a car. Well, on my 18th birthday, I got no car or even anything close to a similar party, even though my academic standing was better than my brother's. I basically worked too hard for my parents' approval, and I never got it. When I asked them why my brother got a car and not me, they claimed that my brother worked harder for it, which was later confirmed to not be true when I got a bigger scholarship. Well, my grandma happened to be eavesdropping, and she laid into my parents, and then she got the rest of the family involved. And for the record, they were planning on getting involved anyways. My grandma just stepped things up right then and there. But after several family members laid into them, my parents just tried to save face and buy me a car, but they treated me like a brat who was getting a new toy when they gave me the keys. It was a late 90s Subaru that I honestly thought was great, but it turned out to have a blown head gasket that had barely been holding together with sealer. My parents treated me like I was a brat for wanting equal treatment, and then when the car went bad, their reaction was to apathetically shrug and call it karma, which caused my grandparents to start it all over again with them and caused a huge family intervention. I got many people messaging me and asking if having a car was really necessary, and that I basically forced my parents into it. But I didn't force anything, and it would have happened anyways if I didn't ask my parents why. And you know what? I really did need the car. I had no way of having a job without one. My parents lived 10 miles from the nearest bus stop, and I literally had no way of making money before college without a car. And no, I couldn't get rides. No one was available for that on a daily basis. So many people I talked to here tried to dance around my reasoning to insert their own logic, many of which I felt were projecting their own problems onto me. And then there was the straight up trolls and jerks. I don't even want to repeat, let alone remember what they all said to me, but a lot of them kept it up after I got the verdict that no, I'm not the jerk, almost as if they had an axe to grind, and it really did not help my mental state at the time. Now, as you can imagine, my family laid into my parents all over again in that family intervention, and by the time they were done, they looked like scolded kids sitting there looking at their feet. The Subaru was sold as junk, and my grandparents essentially forced my parents to buy me a better car. So I ended up getting a Honda Civic, and my uncle went over the car with a fine-tooth comb before they bought it. And that time, my parents didn't even treat me like a brat. And yes, I still have the Honda, and yes, it still works fine. I've kept up with the oil changes and the like, and I've not had any accidents either, as I really am a careful driver. But honestly, the final thing that broke my parents before I left was finding out that I got a better scholarship than my brother. Any excuses they'd previously had to favor my brother so completely were thrown out the window, and were forced to give me words of encouragement I knew they didn't mean. And in wondering why they disliked me so much, I later found out from my grandma why I was treated differently was because because my parents had wanted their second child to be a girl. My grandma ended up admitting even more to me later after I left for college. Before I was born, my parents were so convinced that I would be a girl that they bought a bunch of girl stuff without even checking my gender through ultrasound. Well, I found out from my grandma about a year ago that my mom tried raising me as a girl for like the first 6 months of my life. She was putting me in girls' clothing and calling me by a different name, and my father completely enabled it all. And I know this is all true because my grandma showed me old family photos of me and my brother when I was an infant, and I was wearing pink in all of them. There was even a visible name tag on some of them, and on it had the name my parents wanted for a girl. But once word got out, my parents stopped dressing me as a girl. My grandparents told my mother that trying to raise me as something I wasn't even giving me a choice on whether or not I wanted to be that. And although my family is rather old school, my grandparents are surprisingly open-minded people, and they put the hammer down on my parents. So the girl treatment stopped, but instead of new clothing, they gave me my brother's hand-me-downs for years. That is, until my grandparents noticed that as well and did something about it. Finding out all of this made me realize that my grandparents kept my childhood for being far worse than it was, and they never told me until this past couple of years. So to that end, I am incredibly thankful for them. My mother apparently also struggled to call me by my real name for 2 years or so, and because my parents didn't get a girl, they refused to connect with me like they did my brother. You know, the boy that they actually wanted. And when my grandparents heard I wasn't getting anything new like my brother was, they said that they would petition for guardianship over me, and that they had evidence of the various things I described too. Well, my parents couldn't stand for anything that could become a public scandal, so they stopped with the hand-me-downs and pretended to love me for a while. But as I got older, it degenerated into complete indifference, and then maybe into hate. I'm honestly not sure. Hate means that you still care in some kind of way, but indifference is the actual opposite of love. I just know my parents couldn't accept that their favorite son wasn't the best at everything compared to their unwanted son. And since I moved out, they've barely interacted with the family. They threw themselves into work, in part because the rest of the family forced them to contribute to my college, like they did my brothers, but also because to them, working was the only thing that gave them a reason to tell everyone to leave them alone. My grandma suspects they've even slept in their cars a few times just to avoid going home. I only saw my parents at Christmas at my uncle's house for the past couple of years, and they barely even spoke to me. Now that I was living my best life away from them, I guess you could say that they just stopped bothering to act like I was their son. They don't want me anymore after the family humiliation they feel like they suffered, even though they know they brought it on themselves, and they've become workaholics to do little else. My grandmother told me my bedroom is basically exactly how I left it on the day that I moved out. My parents have not even gone inside of it, but they kept my brother's room clean and ready for the day that he'd finally come back home after college, except that is not what happened. They flew out to see him for his graduation and had a big celebration with him, and of course I was not invited, not that I could afford it in the first place, but my grandparents went along and they gave me all the juicy details. My parents were still convinced my brother would be coming back home, and that's when he awkwardly told them that he already secured a job through an internship that he had done the past year, and that he had found an apartment of his own too. Well, when they heard this, my father became furious, and my mother lost her mind crying and begging him to come home, but he refused. You see, this past 2 years, my brother and I have reconnected a bit. He found my account online and then he called me. He wasn't angry, but honestly just wanted to talk. He admitted to me that our parents put him through a lot as well. Our parents absolutely smothered him, especially when I wasn't around, and our father was also quite strict with his expectations. So the fact that I did better than my brother when our parents had invested everything into him just completely broke them. And now they're extra broken because my brother refused to come home with them. The way our parents treated my brother is also the reason we stopped connecting as siblings until this past couple of years. He did bully me at times when we were growing up, but that's because being the favorite went to his head. But it was favoritism with strings attached. And when he realized that, he got counseling after moving out. My brother also has a girlfriend that he met while in college, and he kept her a secret because he knew our parents wouldn't approve, and well, they didn't when they found out. So my brother blew up on them, especially when my mother referred to his girlfriend as if she was some kind of like lady of the night, if you know what I mean. Mind you, my mom hasn't even met her at this point. For the record, my brother's girlfriend is in nursing school and a year away from graduation herself, and my brother says that she's the best. Now, I've never met her, but she sounds wonderful by the way he's described her. My grandma told me my mother went so far as to hire a private investigator to find out who my brother's girlfriend actually was, and she was actually irritated to know that she was squeaky clean, and she came from a good family on the same side politically too. But in her mind, she was the reason my brother wasn't coming back, even though my brother made it clear he decided that before even meeting his girlfriend. My father had basically become stoically silent about it from what I heard, but my mother let it slip to my brother that she'd hired a detective, and my brother gave our parents a piece of his mind. And this led to a whole argument about how they gave him everything, and he was ungrateful for not coming back. But he called them out that being the favorite child is awful as well, because they nearly made him like them. And this absolutely broke my parents to hear that. My brother told our grandparents, and they staged another family intervention, one that I was even involved in through video call. My parents tried to not even pay attention to me, but even my brother told them to talk to me. We all told them enough was enough. They had 2 sons and they needed to start treating us fairly, because they let something as idiotic as not being born the gender they wanted to ruin their love for me from day one. It was then that my father hit his breaking point. He started screaming out loud, "You want us to admit we messed up? Well, yeah, we did. What do you want us to do about it? You want us to time travel? We're paying for the original poster's college too. What more does he want from us?" Eventually, things ended very poorly in that intervention. My mom cried that she was sorry to me, but even then, I still didn't feel her heart was in it, because she didn't spend much time apologizing to me at all before moving on to my brother through the phone he was video calling from. And she spent a long time crying and apologizing to him. That is, until he told her to go back and actually apologize to me like she meant it. Well, it was at that moment that my father grabbed the phone and shut it off. Then he just sat down and told everybody else to leave. The last thing my grandparents said to my parents was that they were disappointed in them, and that maybe losing both sons has finally shown them that they should have never favored one of us. Right now, my parents are not on speaking terms with the rest of the family. My grandma heard a rumor they may be planning to move, but they have a paid-off country home and great careers. I feel like they would be fools to move. But since my brother isn't going back, and I'm not likely to go back either, I suppose it's not really an issue. I kind of doubt that they would welcome me in if I visit after the crap that went down, but I am still very thankful to them for helping to pay for my college. My student loans were significantly reduced thanks to them. But when it comes to being parents themselves, I think we can all agree that they just didn't do a very good job. Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that your parents absolutely suck, and they played favorites to such a degree that it literally almost ruined your life. Like, that's not fair for you at all, and from the sounds of it, especially based on your backstory, this has been going on ever since you were a kid, and that's just not fair. Not only that they didn't treat you correctly or even equally with your brother, but also that you just found out that they didn't even want you in the first place. They wanted a little girl and not a boy. So for them to treat you in this way and basically like ostracize you from the family and forcibly make you the rejected son, like that in my opinion is just straight up awful, because you did not deserve that in the slightest, and they are awful parents for the way that they treated you. An entitled old jerk demands a price cut literally only because of his age and his veteran status. But when I deny him his request, he claims that I'm disrespecting veterans for not giving him my product at a third of the price. Here's what happened. Okay, for starters, I build scale model ships because I'm kind of lame. Unfortunately, the genre is dominated by often angry old people who seem to think that the rest of us owe them everything because they managed to get old. Now, let me get down to some specifics. I have a lot of rare resin kits that I've collected over the years, and I have decided to offload some stuff that were mostly impulse buys. I checked eBay's sold auctions and other examples of recent sales, and I decided to price my items accordingly. I paid for a vendor booth at a show, and people really were cool for the most part. Many did bargain with me, and that's okay. I sold some bundles, and then I moved on to reasonable offers. Well, that's when this old entitled jerk steps in, who evidently was alive purely on his own self-persecution and bitterness. This guy saw a large resin model kit of a Japanese battleship that I had priced at about $375. This was the original retail, with recent sales well north of $400. He came by a few times, and he grumbled about my prices being too high for people on fixed incomes, but I honestly just ignored him. Well, towards the end of the show, he came back to my booth and offered me $100 for it, but I just flatly refused. He told me he'd always wanted that kit and would build it, and that he's a disabled veteran that feels better when he builds. But I was unsurprised given his previous whinings at my booth and prior shows. I'm not joking when I say he tends to walk even more laboriously when trying to rip off a vendor. So I told him thank you for your service, and then I said I would sell him the kit for $325 cash, which is what I paid for. Well, when I said that, the dude fell into a complete rage, accusing me of disrespecting veterans. He then told me to my face that I take advantage of old people who don't have the money for expensive things. Now, as a side note, this guy has has gout breath. And trust me, if you know, you know. I reminded him that this is a hobby. It's not his home or his food bill or his transportation. After calling me everything but a white boy, the man kicks my vendor table and stomps away like a petulant 6th grader. Now, what was the worst part about all of this? I had other old entitled modelers asking me why I couldn't work with him because of the aforementioned reasons. They were less antagonistic, but they were kind of rooting for his side as well. And these same people wonder why younger folk don't attend scale model shows, or why it's becoming increasingly hard to find vendors who don't simply use an online auction or some kind of marketplace. I'm all down with giving deals, but trying to guilt someone into compliance is honestly a really awful thing to do. Yeah, that's really rude in my opinion. Just because you want something and you're like really adamant about getting it, doesn't mean you have to be like, wow, you disrespect veterans. You're making me pay full price instead of giving it to me at 1/3 of the price. Like seriously, that is so obnoxious and so uncalled for. The original poster wasn't disrespecting this guy because he was a veteran. He was polite and professional, but still remained firm on his prices and said, listen, this is what it cost. So good for you for standing up for yourself, because this guy was completely out of line. Am I the jerk for yelling at my neighbor's kids after they knowingly scratched my car and then rode off on their bikes to try and avoid any kind of responsibility? Because right now in retrospect, I worry that I might have taken things a bit too far, because right now I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so today I was doing some yard work when the neighbor's kid, who is about 15 years old, came out of their garage with their bicycles. We share a driveway since it is a townhouse block, and I had my car parked outside. Since I just got a new car a few weeks ago, I am admittedly paranoid about any potential damage. So as they wheeled their bikes through the space between my car and the neighbors, I was watching very closely. Once they reached the end of the driveway, one of the kids put the bike on the kickstand and walked back towards the house. And as they walked away, the bike fell over, hitting the side of my car. When they heard the bike hit the car and fall to the ground, they looked to the side of the car and then directly at me. And then they got on the bike and rode off. Well, I got up to check and see if there was any damage, and there was a black scratch on the bumper. The other sibling, who had not ridden off yet, was there, and I told him that the other had scratched the car and took off. So they said they would go get them and come back, and a few minutes later they returned. Well, when they returned, I raised my voice at both of them, and I said that when you damage someone's property, you don't pretend that it didn't happen. You apologize and you try to make it right. They were saying that they didn't see the scratch and that they didn't hear it, and all sorts of other excuses. But since they made direct eye contact with me when it happened, this only made me angrier. After a few minutes, I managed to get the scratch off the car, so there was no damage and the kids rode off. But with all of this in mind, am I the jerk for yelling at these kids instead of waiting for their parents to return home? What should I do? No, I don't think you're in the wrong for yelling at these kids, because clearly they did not want to get in trouble for something they definitely did. Whether you remove the scratch or not, the fact that they rode off trying to like escape any kind of responsibility, in my opinion, is super inappropriate, because you have it right in my opinion. If you damage someone's property, you absolutely need to fess up to it. It is the right thing to do in my opinion, especially when you do it literally right in front of the person who owns the property. So no, I don't think you're in the wrong at all, because the way these kids acted by running off, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. My toxic entitled father demands that I allow him to move into my home, despite the fact that he has burned every bridge in my family, as well as mistreated me, my mom, and my kids. So I decided that enough was enough, and in that moment, I put my foot down hard, telling him exactly how I feel after so many years of awful treatment. Here's what happened. Okay, so my parents are divorced because my dad cheated, and there is a lot I could say about this, but when it comes to having a short version, basically, my mom found out my dad was cheating, and she started the divorce proceedings. As a result, my dad got vindictive and started to allow and encourage his mistress to get vindictive towards my mom. Well, when his mistress broke up with him, he tried to come crawling back to my mom, who shut the door in his face. And as a result, he spent the whole divorce process lashing out at my mom, me, and my other siblings and our kids, all the way to the point where we had to all go no contact with him. Anyways, the divorce was finalized. Dad and his mistress have been on again and off again, and they even had a kid together. There was some drama where he denied the kid was his, but when he got a paternity test, it all proved that it definitely was his. Well, fast forward, and he actually showed up to my house a few weeks ago and told me that he was going to stay with me. Mind you, he didn't ask me, he told me. And not just that, but he also told me that while he was here, my husband and I needed to move into the guest bedroom so he could use our room as it was an in-suite, because you know, he definitely needs that. Now, as you can imagine, I put my foot down, and I put it down hard. hard. I told him after everything he did, how dare he darken my doorstep, and worse, not even apologize, not even to ask how I am or how his grandkids are, but instead to dictate to me that he is staying in my house. I am normally a pretty calm and go with the flow kind of person, but I just lost it, and I screamed all the things that he did to us. The vindictive attacks, the way he used my kids as weapons to get back at me, and the smear campaigns that he led against my mom. Well, he ended up screaming back, "When you came crying home after you broke up with your ex, I let you stay in my house and eat my food, and I just let you come home. I didn't act like a complete jerk like you." Now, to be clear, the breakup he's talking about was when my former fiance cheated on me with multiple women. Oh, and also for anyone who hasn't read my previous post, it is not his house, it's my mom's, and he tried to steal it from her during the divorce to give it to his bratty mistress. So at that point, I decided just to shut the door on him. Long story short, the police had to be called as my dad refused to leave, and I even found out today why he tried to stay with me. His mistress has been bleeding him dry with child support and alimony. I think they've broken up for good, and he's had to sell every asset he had, and now he's completely broke. And I know this because he's staying with my uncle, who is his brother, and he called me to let me know exactly what's going on. The saddest and funniest part about all of this is how my dad won't stop talking about how heartless and ungrateful I am to literally anybody who will listen to him. And he is posting passive-aggressive posts on his Facebook account about how he does everything for his kids, but then they throw him to the curb. This whole ordeal over the last few years has been very hard. I've been going to therapy and have slowly been coming to terms with the fact that my father isn't the man I thought he was, and he likely never will be. But when he did this, it brought back a lot of hurt. I can't believe he would do this to me. I just don't understand how somebody can do this and can behave this way. But honestly, it is what it is. My dad's an entitled, vindictive jerk to everybody, and I never thought I'd be able to say that, but I'm honestly so glad that I can. Wow, imagine being so entitled that you show up to your kid's house who you have completely betrayed and say, "Oh, not only are you gonna let me in your house, but you and your husband are also gonna have to move out." Like, what was he thinking? After all the things he put your family through, as well as the smear campaign against your mom, and all the horrible ways he tried to use your kids against you, like, this guy is absolutely walking on thin ice. He has no business being around you or anybody else in your family because he is literally just so toxic. And worst of all, he literally just doesn't care because he seriously thought he could walk into your house and you guys would just let him in as if nothing happened. So truly, I'm so sorry that he acted this way, and I really hope you never have to deal with him ever again. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I overreacting for not wanting to talk to my partner's family, as they basically said that I wasn't good for my partner since I have been unemployed for about 5 months? Because right now I am still very hurt, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my partner and I have been dating for about 4 years. I'm a lawyer and she works in tech, and we live together. Well, I lost my job this spring and I qualified for unemployment benefits. I'm also lucky to have an emergency fund and no debt. And my partner's job is great and she makes plenty of money. This period of unemployment was really good for me. With more time and energy to reflect, I admitted to myself that I had been depressed for over a year. I also realized that law firm litigation is not the right path for me. So for the first 3 months after losing my job, I focused on healing myself and rethinking my career direction. I went to therapy, I resumed exercise, I reduced my alcohol consumption, I began prescription medication, I kept a clean house and I played with my dog, I improved my relationships, enjoyed outdoor hobbies, read challenging books, did pro bono work, and met many people to chat about different career paths. I applied to about 100 or so jobs, and I even interviewed for a few of them, but it wasn't all that important to me. I also played a lot of video games during this time, often until the wee hours of the morning. I mostly played thoughtful, story-driven games alone, and sometimes when I was stoned. On occasion, I played multiplayer games with my partner's sister, who doesn't have many friends right now in her new city. My mental health improved greatly, and I've been in a full-time, white-knuckle job hunt for the past 2 months. I'm getting more interviews and hopefully something will pan out soon, but I'm supporting myself without issue in the meantime, and I still cover about 50% of our living cost. Well, yesterday, I overheard my partner having a passionate conversation with her mother on the phone. I realized that she was defending someone and accusing her mother of projecting, but I didn't want to listen in. A few minutes later, the call ended and she left the room with a sullen face. Then I asked her about her conversation, and she explained that her mother says the entire family is soured on her relationship with me, and they are very concerned about her. They also know, as a sister confirmed, that I am playing video games most nights, and sometimes during the day, and that I use the herb, and as such, they don't think that I'm sufficiently focused on my career, and that our relationship is doomed as a result. Then, last night, my partner received text messages from her sisters. The texts were similar in tone and content, advising that she leave and offering their support. The text messages read as if I'm mistreating my partner, indicating that I'm manipulating her to stay with me while I fail out of my career. This completely caught me off guard. My partner's family seemed to really like me. Both of her siblings have stayed with us. I went to one of my partner's sister's wedding and have had quite a few positive social experiences hanging out with my partner and her other sister. The parents wanted us to go on a trip with them, which I abstained from because I had to work. How did their opinion of me become so negative so quickly after a single career setback? They know my partner isn't paying for me, and my work ethic is fine. My background is more of a hard-working underdog type of story than most, and I'm healthy and motivated again. And I don't mistreat anybody. I'm a gentle person who would totally be supportive of my partner if she actually wanted to leave me. And above all, my partner is an intelligent adult who knows her needs much better than they do. She can make her own decisions. I told my partner today that I don't want to interact with her immediate family anymore, unless doing so is necessary for some important reason. And when I said that, she said that she understood, but she was still upset. So am I overreacting in this situation? We all gossip, I guess, and I may also be overly sensitive to the relative socioeconomic class disparity between my partner's family and mine. And maybe I'm projecting some of the resentment I feel for how I've been treated in other situations by more privileged people. What should I do? Okay, I have to say I can kind of see both sides of this. For starters, I think her family really is trying to seek out her best interest, but they've gone way beyond the mark in my opinion. It's one thing to be concerned about your career path and what you're doing for a job, but it's an entirely different thing in my opinion to be like, oh, he's gonna hold you back. He's manipulative and he's being so terrible towards you. You need to dump him and move along. Because to me at least, that gives off this energy that they were almost like wanting to say that for a long time, and they finally got the chance to like express how they feel right then and there. As if this is somehow like the best opportunity to be like, okay, now you can finally dump this guy after 4 years. But on the other hand, I do understand that they're like, wait a second, this guy hasn't had a job for 5 months, and he's spending all his time playing video games and smoking the herb. Like if I was her family member and I saw that happening, I probably would be worried as well. But I would much rather have a conversation of some kind, instead of saying something like, oh yeah, get out while you can, this is a sinking ship, or something along those lines. Like that just seems like really extreme in my opinion. So with all that in mind and all the context that you could possibly have towards this story, I think you're completely justified for saying that you don't want to talk to these people anymore. They've shown their true colors in a way that you never expected because you thought they had your back to some degree, but it's clear that they want to play the toxic route, and I honestly don't blame you for not wanting to talk to them. My mother-in-law is incredibly intrusive in my life as she is constantly entering our room and cleaning our bedroom, all without my permission. And now, after dealing with this for so long, I feel like I'm at my breaking point because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, before I go any further, I need to give you some background. I'm a 26-year-old female and I got married a few months ago to my husband. Prior to this, we had been dating for 5+ years. We are from a country where the culture expects married couples to stay with the man's parents. Although I was very against this setup before the wedding, mostly because I already owned property that we could have used, my partner insisted that staying with his parents would be a better financial decision for us. Fast forward to now, and we've been living with his parents for a few months now. I moved into my husband's bedroom, and we have our own washroom as well. But all other spaces are not private, as they are shared with his parents. When we first moved in after the wedding, I noticed that my mother-in-law, who is a stay-at-home mom, would make our beds on days where we had forgotten or maybe we were running late. The one place I can call my own in this home is my bedroom, and it made me so upset that someone had invaded my privacy there. I expressed my concerns to my husband, and he spoke to her, so she stopped. And this was about 2 months into the marriage. At the same time, she would take our laundry in my absence and do it for us. This includes washing, drying, folding, and even putting it away for us. Initially, I thought she was trying to be helpful because I was extremely busy with school, but I still told him to tell her to stop because I don't want other people to be going through my clothing, especially my underwear or anything like that. I've also insisted that I do my own laundry, and after a few months of reminding her, she has finally stopped doing that. My issue is that every time I think she has stopped entering my bedroom in my absence, I find signs that she definitely was there. Every time my husband and I go on a trip or aren't home for a few hours, I come home to see my bed made, my belongings organized, and things put away in closets and dressers. I told my husband that this needs to stop, and he said he spoke to her. Since then, we also started to lock our bedroom door from the outside when we aren't at home, just to indicate that this space is not for others. However, the lock is really easy to open with a fingernail. Now, for context, I'm currently unemployed, but I'm going back to school in a month. I consider myself a clean person, and I make sure to clean our washroom and vacuum and clean our bedroom space weekly, if not more. My husband helps me as well, but he works a lot more hours, so I pick up the slack where I can. The only time there's any kind of clutter is if I or my partner and I are returning from a weekend trip and I have to unpack, but I can't find time to do so. My husband has been coddled by his stay-at-home mom since he was a little kid and doesn't find any reason to be concerned about her actions. I have always been an independent person, and I've lived by myself for several years, so this behavior is really odd and incredibly invasive to me. Last week, I came home from a trip to see my parents, and I noticed that my mother-in-law had supposedly organized all the clutter from our bedroom. She had folded all of our clothing and hung up a painting behind our bed that I was definitely not interested in seeing there. I was really upset at seeing this behavior still continue because my husband had reassured me that he had already spoken to her on multiple occasions. Well, I got really angry, and I told him that he must not have said anything to her if she thinks it's still okay to go through our things and our personal space. That same day, he spoke to her again and informed her that when the door is locked, it means that she is not welcome in that space. She then got really mad and said that it's her home and she can go wherever she wants, and that it's not right for us to ask for our space to be untouched by others. Essentially, my mother-in-law intentionally unlocked a locked door so that she could try to help us out, whatever that means. Now, I need to add one more thing. My mother-in-law has a problem with spending and buys anything that she sees. She has too many belongings for a house that size and doesn't know how to keep it organized. Her bedroom, the guest room, and the hallway, and even the basement is an indescribable mess that she hasn't gotten around to clearing for maybe 8 months. And yet she insists that our little bedroom is not clean and it must be attended to right away. I'm honestly freaking out because this makes me so uncomfortable and very weird, especially because she only does it when I'm not at home. I told my husband if this continues, I want to move out, but he thinks I'm being a little dramatic and that I should deal with the problem myself if it bothers me so much. What should I do? Okay, I'm gonna make this very clear and I'm gonna be completely honest. For starters, I understand there's differences of culture and all this other stuff going on, but my God, if I was going through this, I would definitely be moving out. The original poster has their own property. They have their own home that they can live in. So for them to be forced to live with their in-laws in this kind of way, in my opinion, from my very limited perspective of this culture, is very strange and foreign to me, and I just would not put up with that in the slightest. Now, if this house was big enough and there was enough room for you to have your own space and do your own thing, then I'm sure this wouldn't be a problem. I'm sure you and your husband could coexist with your in-laws no problem. But the fact that you have one room and one washroom to even have some kind of privacy, even though you've tried to lock the door on multiple occasions, that would drive me insane, and there's no way on earth I would ever put up with that. So in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would be making plans to get out of that house. The mother-in-law in this story sounds incredibly intrusive, and she literally does not care about your privacy in the slightest, and that is not something that I think you should ever have to put up with. I've decided to go no contact with my friends whom I've known for a long time after they have repeatedly taken advantage of me. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm celebrating 2 years of no contact with my ex-friend of mine, who we will call Emma, and I figured this would be a good place to share the story of our friendship. Emma was bullied a lot, so I became her only school friend. As a result, her parents love-bombed me. They were buying me gifts and calling me Emma's savior and all this other stuff. Our other friend, who we will call Kate, was her childhood friend, and we became a cute group of 3. But by college, I realized Emma was falling far behind in maturity. Her mother would guilt trip me and ask me to help her poor daughter with basic things, including catching the bus with her or driving her, even though she could drive herself. It became very one-sided, with me paying and planning everything. To trick her into making more effort, I would make up excuses, teach her how to do it, or just simply tell her to do it herself. But things did not improve. Now, for example, we traveled with my new college group, and by the end of it, my friends politely asked that I don't invite Emma again. She made us almost miss flights and other deadlines because she wanders off to call her mom, or she loses things or gets scammed, scammed, or randomly starts unpacking her luggage in public. She always needed basic help. She never pitched in for the Ubers or any of the food, and the hotel mixed up the rooms, and she refused to swap to try and make things easier for everybody. She even tried to interrupt and third wheel my one date night with my significant other, leaving me endless missed calls, pestering us for our location, and wanting me to pay for her Uber to meet us. I cried many times that trip, and I didn't want to upset her, so I told her the trip was too stressful in general. But her response was to say, well, I had fun. You just try to control things too much. Fast forward, and for her 25th birthday, she invites me and Kate to a dinner, but at the last minute, books a 5-star hotel room for us and asks us to pay her back our share. But I just straight up refuse, saying I have plans before the dinner and the day of. But Kate sends me a direct message privately, and she says to me, this is really important to Emma. It'll mean a lot if we did the hotel, and it will be just like a sleepover. Just pay, and we'll do things differently next time. So I gave in, and I ended up paying. During the dinner, Emma was unimpressed by my gift, that it was just Chanel lipstick. When it came to paying the bill, Emma says, you guys pay between the two of you, I'm the birthday girl. And I say we should have discussed this beforehand, and they both turned on me by saying, you should know the birthday girl never pays. While they went to the other bars, I faked feeling sick and went back to the hotel room, calling other friends and my significant other for support. And that's when I decided to stop being friends. I left the first thing in the morning for my next event, upsetting both Emma and Kate because they actually hadn't organized a ride home, as they expected me to just drive them home. Now, I hadn't spoken to them for months, but they eventually begged to meet up and celebrate my birthday. And the event went surprisingly well until the bill came around. Now, I do not drink, but they went through 2 bottles of wine and cocktails. And despite all that, Emma wanted me to pay. She said to me, you invited us out? You're the birthday girl treating us to a night out. And I'm thinking to myself, you are such a hypocrite. Kate was more reasonable and suggested paying food 3 ways and they would pay for their own drinks. But Kate's card wouldn't work and Emma never pays, so she forgot her PIN, meaning that I ended up paying. Kate immediately transferred me money, but Emma definitely didn't. And so began the final chapter of our friendship. For weeks, Emma kept dodging the question of paying me back for dinner, as well as for some concert tickets that she also owed me. I even started giving deadlines. I said to her, please have this done by tomorrow. Her response would be like, hey, how was your weekend? Or she would just read the text message and not say anything else. I mean, the audacity of this lady. I eventually called Emma asking why she hasn't paid me back, and it's then that she admits that she doesn't know how to transfer money. We walked through it together, but she still never made the payment. I chased her up again on text messaging, and I'm still just completely ghosted. I asked Kate to get Emma to transfer me the money, and she said, that's weird, she always pays me back. And that really hurt to hear. I continued to chase Emma again a few days later, but I'm still completely ghosted. And at this point, I had had enough. I sent her both concert tickets, and I told her to go with her sister because I'm not doing this any longer. But much to my surprise, that's when Emma immediately pays me. It took almost 2 months. She made all of the excuses you could possibly think of. She said to me, I'm tired and I don't check my phone. You don't know how hard it is to be a receptionist. You expect so much of me, and this outburst has came out of nowhere. I can't believe you're punishing me. I then sent her a long text message about everything I had bottled up, including the travel story, her birthday and my birthday, being taken for granted and then some. And then I asked for space. Kate then calls me angrily and demands that I apologize for hurting Emma's feelings. But I said no, I'm not apologizing for this, and I'd like for the both of them not to contact me. A few days later, Kate sends me this big text message, and she does apologize, but then she accuses me of being inconsiderate. She says that I'm controlling and impatient. She justifies making no effort when traveling or for any social events because she's a guest and I'm apparently in charge. She even goes further to say that this is my fault because I should have been more clear with telling her to plan, pay, and put in effort, and that I should apologize for creating all this drama and hurting her. She ends her text passive-aggressively, saying to me, since you're so hung up about this and need me to make more effort or whatever, I'll plan the next thing. Are you free this next weekend? Where do you want to go? I'll go ahead and book it. But instead, I asked for a month of no contact, and then she didn't even respond. A month passes and I get another angry text message from her. She says to me, it's been a month and 1 day now. Why haven't you reached out? I said I'll book this time. Stop hiding. We need to meet up and fight it out. Well, I declined, and I said the break helped me realize that I'm happier keeping our distance for now, and that I wished her well. And after that, her and her family immediately blocked me on social media, and that was it. Now, obviously, I'm well aware of the mistakes I made. My boundaries were not strong enough enough, and I fell for the love bombing, and I shouldn't have felt guilty for saying no. But now I know I will never get treated like that ever again. Wow, your friends can hardly be called friends in the first place. They took advantage of your kindness, they literally took advantage of your money like straight up, and they quite literally are hypocrites across the board. So honestly, I don't blame you for cutting them out of your life, because based on what you described, they do not sound like good friends in the slightest. My former toxic roommate was an absolute nightmare to live with and refused to pay her rent on time or even respect me and my husband while we were living together. But now, 3 years later, after we moved out away from this crazy Karen, we come to find out that she is not only still following us, but also saying terrible things about me and my fiance. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 24-year-old female, and 3 years ago, I moved in with my friend who we will call Karen. We had been friends for about a year, but had known each other and been acquaintances for roughly 10 years. This friend was known to be a little bipolar, but she respected me and knew that I had way clearer boundaries than her other friends. We moved in with my now fiance in a 2-bedroom apartment. We were paying 2/3 of the rent, while Karen paid 1/3. The first issue arose when she asked if she could move her dog in, and I said no problem. Well, I was working as an assistant manager for anywhere from 40 to 55 hours a week, and I would come home to dog pee and poop everywhere, and I literally mean everywhere. We're talking the floors, the couch, even the walls. The dog also chewed everything up, and it got into the garbage. I would let him out and clean up the mess, and then I would inform Karen that she needed to take better care of her dog. Well, she demanded that her job, which she typically works 6 hours a day, was too much for her, and that it was my job to take care of her dog. Meanwhile, she constantly called off, or she would show up to work hours late. At one point, I refused to clean it. So at most, she would pick up the dog poop, but she wouldn't even scrub anything. I mean, I witnessed one of her friends literally sleep with her face next to an unscrubbed dog poop stain on the couch, and I just about vomited. The second big issue arose when second month's rent was due. I texted Karen and my fiance, who for the sake of the story, I'll call him Bear, and I had our rent ready, and if we could just get together to write a check to the renters, that would be great. Well, she told me the banks were closed, and she didn't have any money, as if the banks not being open somehow made up for her poor planning. So we had to rearrange our finances to cover her third of the rent. I texted her that we covered it for her, and that she owed us 1/3 of the rent. She replied a few hours later that her mommy paid it, so her rent for next month would be covered. I replied that would mean that my fiance and I were only 1/3 ahead, and she would still owe me for next month, as we were the ones that paid extra. Well, she argued and was adamant that we were wrong, and that she was not going to pay. Another issue involved the food in the house. In the first month that we lived there, we spent $600 on food to fill the house and pantry, while Karen shopped with me and bought equal amounts of food. I budget very well with food, and one way that I do that is by buying store brand products. Well, Karen kept snapping that she didn't like store brand, and that I was pissing her off. I told her that what I buy for myself was none of her business, as we are both buying our own groceries. But then I caught her sending her boyfriend to work with my food, and we're talking like an entire 12-pack of something that I bought, and I definitely got very irritated. The food waste really ticked me off when one time I had friends over for a party, and I came out the next day to my food all thrown out or just shoved out of the fridge but still in containers. And Karen's only excuse was that there was no room for her food in the fridge, so she just emptied it completely. After 3 weeks, I ran out of $600 worth of food, and I had to yet again rearrange my budget to allow for more groceries. After this incident, petty and lazy stuff happened all the time. I tried to wash my clothes in our shared washer, and I would come back to my wet clothing soaking across the basement floor. We found a week-old rotisserie chicken in the microwave with maggots in it, and there was so much more, but honestly, it's just not worth my energy trying to type it out. After my clothing was found strewn across the floor, I came up really heated, and I said that my stuff better start getting respected. At which point, Karen's boyfriend tried to step up to me and my fiance, and I told him he had better watch himself. Karen then turned around and refused to look at me or talk to her boyfriend, but instead yelled that I needed to step up and clean up after Karen more because she was tired from work, as if I wasn't working way more than her. At this point, I agreed to sign the boyfriend's name, who we will call Steven, onto the lease, and I did this because it made it way easier for me to sign my name off of the lease. And I then informed Karen that I would be leaving as soon as possible. But then later on, I came home from work to my furniture on the front porch. I moved back in, and I told Karen that she better not touch my stuff again before I move out. At which point, she informed me that she paid rent early, so I could leave since I didn't pay my share for that month. The very next day, I got a screen recording sent to me of a 15-minute Snapchat video of Karen's boyfriend going on a substance-fueled rant, saying how he's gonna beat me me up for basically standing up for myself against his girlfriend, and that my fiance was a big teddy bear, so if he tried to get in the way, he would fight him as well. He then went on a rant saying the house was a mess because it was my fault, and the dog mess was my responsibility. The whole video was a mess, and you could tell that he was very high, but it was more than enough to make us decide that we were just done. So I called my dad and I asked for help moving furniture. We showed up to our apartment and Steven was there, and that's when there was a massive altercation. Steven really got into it with Bear, so much so that I had to call the police because things really got bad. So the cops showed up and we gave our statements, and we had the cops watch while we took the rest of our belongings. And I wanted our statements taken so that my roommate couldn't manipulate the situation. And despite the altercation between my boyfriend and Steven, no charges were filed for either party. Karen has now made posts saying that it's on site as soon as she sees me, but I have blocked her on all social media and even went so far as to delete mutual friends that I had no interest in forcing to take sides. She has followed multiple social media platforms and has had friends comment on statuses saying awful things about me. Now, this is where things get really weird. I thought that maybe she was done obsessing over me for roughly 2 years now. I moved out and I became a mom, and I'm so excited to say that we are pregnant again with our second child. But recently, her fiance keeps coming up for the people you may know tab on my social media, and I got a notification saying that I may know him too. I felt like she was trying to follow me again, so I blocked him too. Well, lo and behold, a friend of mine came up to me and said that Karen was bragging that she found out the gender of my baby. And honestly, this is just such weird behavior. I feel like I will forever have a fan because no matter how hard I try to block her, I find out that she's still studying my life. And I'm honestly so sick of her, and I hope I never deal with her ever again. Wow, what a psychopath. Not only Karen, but also her boyfriend. Like, there are so many things that are wrong with this lady, but just to name a few, you are not responsible for her dog. That dog going to the bathroom everywhere and making an absolute mess, that is her responsibility. That's not something that you have to take care of in the slightest. So for her to sit there and be like, it is your responsibility, I'm too busy from work. But like, seriously, what work are you talking about? You work maybe 6 hours a day at that, and you're not even showing up for work, and you're showing up late. But even if that were the case and you had all this time taken away from you from your job, it is still this lady's responsibility to take care of her dog. That literally does not fall on anybody else's shoulders except for her. And it's so crazy to me that she's like, I already paid my rent for next month, so I don't have to pay you back for the rent I missed this month. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? You didn't pay for anything. We literally covered you for the rent that you refused to pay. Like, that part alone would drive me up a wall because I'm just like the original poster. I like to budget my money correctly, and I like to make sure I have money exactly where it needs to be. So for this Karen to not only steal your groceries and take advantage of you in paying the rent, like, that is just so unacceptable. So hopefully you can avoid this lady and her stupid crazy boyfriend, because both of these people sound completely unhinged, and the both of you absolutely do not deserve to be treated the way that they treated you. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled in-law demands money back that my aunt gave out to the family in some kind of desperate ploy to steal from everybody. Here's what happened. Before we get started, all names in the story are fake. Okay, so my wife's Aunt Louise is a great lady. She and her husband lived in the San Francisco Bay Area and bought their home in the late 1970s. After her husband passed away, she sold her home for well over $1 million and moved back to live closer to her family where she grew up, which is a farming area in Southern California. She lives very frugally, so she doesn't really have to worry about money. Aunt Louise had 3 children, who are all now in their 40s and early 50s. The 2 oldest are nice, normal people, but her youngest, by the name of Kay, is a real piece of work. She meets all the criteria for a psychological diagnosis of narcissism. Aunt Louise just turned 70. She's really happy about it and decided to celebrate. She's a very kind and giving person, and celebrating to her means doing something nice for others. Aunt Louise has 3 children, 14 nieces and nephews, and 40 plus grandnieces and grandnephews. I don't know how much she sent to everybody, but based on what she sent to my wife, and knowing how much she likes to be fair, the nieces and nephews each received a check for about $1,000. And based on what she sent to our kids, I suspect that each grandniece and grandnephew received a check for $500. There was also a very kind and personalized note to each person, saying how much she loved them and imploring them to do something fun with this money, and that we should not use it to pay any bills. It was generous and sweet, and when a couple of the kids came by this weekend for a barbecue, we talked about Aunt Louise, their plans for the money, and as I suspect was Aunt Louise's intent, we had happy conversations about about fun plans. Well, that's when the email came in. For background, Aunt Louise's daughter Kay audits her mother's finances that would make the IRS blush. Last Christmas, she berated her mother for vacationing to New York City with a friend, which, by the way, going to New York City at Christmas is something that Aunt Louise has always wanted to do. She has also frequently talked about plans for her inheritance, and all with her still very much alive mother sitting right next to her. Kay sent my wife and others an email claiming that her mother is suffering from dementia and Alzheimer's with a request. While we suspect this is Kay just being Kay, my wife still called Aunt Louise just in case. But all of this was news to Aunt Louise, who was completely lucid as always. Now, here's the best part. In the email, Kay asked everybody to send the money they received from Aunt Louise over to Kay. She nobly volunteered to handle all the deposits herself to avoid being a burden on Aunt Louise, who is clearly too infirm to attend to such a taxing matter. Now, in light of the times that Kay has helped herself to Aunt Louise's money without permission, which is also known as stealing, I'm fairly convinced not a dime would have made it back to Aunt Louise. And I honestly cannot stand that woman and all the things that she puts my family through. Wow, that lady sounds like an absolute jerk. She literally tried to scam the entire family and be like, oh, send it back to me. It was a mistake. She's gonna need all that money back. Thanks. Like, first of all, if I got a check for $1,000, I either would have cashed it like right away, or I would have already used it for something. And secondly, with someone like this lady, who clearly has a sketchy past and is really just like a piece of work, there's no way I would ever agree to anything that she would request. So truly, I really hope that things work out for your family and you don't have to deal with Kay any longer, because her behavior, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. An entitled guest shows up an hour late for their dinner reservation and then demands a manager when I don't give in to their every whim. Here's what happened. Many years ago, I worked at a Michelin star restaurant on Fulton and Morgan in Chicago. Now, it wasn't the flagship restaurant, and at the time, it didn't have an active star, but it is still in the Michelin Guide, and it's like the casual feeder restaurant for the rest of the restaurant group. And it was also in the middle of COVID. So in Chicago, there was a law that you had to be vaccinated in order to dine at a restaurant, which didn't hurt our business but made our job a lot harder. Whenever someone would come in, I would have to say the following: "Hi, welcome in. My name is such and such and I'll be your server tonight. But before we begin, can I see your proof of vaccine?" Once they show us that, I would then start getting their order. We would get them something to drink, we would check their IDs, we would check and see if there's any allergies or dietary restrictions, and then we would go from there. There was also a very strict time limit on a table, and we had to close at 10 o'clock. And it's not like we stopped taking people in at 10. Instead, we stopped taking people in at about 9 o'clock. And we were mostly booked for reservations anyways. And I'm talking an average of 200 to 250 covers a night, with each table having 2 to 3 reservations booked. Now, while working there, I had the pleasure of some very unique opportunities, including rushing a family of walk-ins through a 3-course meal with a dessert, because they only had about 45 minutes before we needed the table back, and we were well aware of that. But also, we dealt with some people who really thought they were so much better than everybody else around them. A man and his girlfriend came in, and they have a reservation for 3, and they're waiting to order. Their third, the guy's sister, just isn't there yet. I try to get them to order something, but they want to wait. And I'm just like, okay, but they ended up waiting for like an hour before their third person finally arrives. Now, their third person was this gorgeous woman, and I was very relieved to see her join the group. So I go over and do my thing. I flirt a little for fun, and I ask them for an order. Now, at this time, we were nearly closing. Everyone else in the restaurant has ordered, and they say they need some time to look things over, and I give it to them. Well, when I come back, they still haven't looked. My boss then tells me to get their orders. I try again, but they say they still need time as they're catching up. But then the chef tells me to get their order. So I go over, and I explain to them that the chef needs their order, and I probably say just that sentence because I've worked here for like a month, and I'm not comfortable being bossy in this way. So my boss tells me the kitchen wants to leave, and I need to get their order or else they're not going to get one. So I explain to them that the kitchen will be closing soon, and they haven't even picked up their menus off the table. So the last 2 guys in the kitchen start to close down, and the kitchen is an open view kitchen with seating around it that's maybe 5 feet from their table, and the girl from New York is facing them. Now, how do I know that she's from New York? Well, the kitchen is closing, and she waves me over, demanding the right to order. I explain that legally their table reservation is only for 2 hours because of the COVID restrictions. I explain that they've extended that stay past the point where they're allowed to have the table, and I also explain that the chefs are leaving, and that I have asked them to order half a dozen times, and that the kitchen has to leave. This woman then looks at me and says, "Well, I'm from New York," but I respond by saying, okay, well, this is Chicago. Well, when I said that, she demands to speak to the owner because she saw him walk in and he had been working on a menu update while also wanting to step in and say hi to the kitchen. Now, the entire time I worked there, I heard him speak maybe like 5 times, and I saw him maybe once a week when the COVID surges weren't bad for reasons that would make sense if you knew him. I tell her that he, like the rest of our staff, has left, so I get her a manager, and I think we got them a dessert or something like that, but I'm not really sure. This woman had gone from being my favorite person in the restaurant that night to being a nightmare trying to get me fired just because she couldn't understand the fact that we had an operating procedure. The chefs that started packing up was our head chef and our sous chef, and he didn't really like me, but he knew that I wanted to do a good job, so he begrudgingly accepted me for the most part. But we were definitely not friends. But also, he had been there at least since noon, maybe even earlier, and had that schedule 5 days a week, and came in on his days off most of the time. This is a man who just wants to cook steaks and then go home. Like on an average week there, I served a famous chef stopping in because he was friends with the owner, not to mention the local celebrities, vineyard owners, CEOs, etc. A chef once drove from St. Louis to dine with us after getting off work on a Friday, then came back the next Friday to try more of our menu. And yet this woman somehow decides that she is the most important person that I have ever served and that has ever sat in our restaurant, and that she doesn't have to follow the same rules. I mean, she even tried to get the owner over here to fire me because I did what my boss required of me. I went from wanting to try to join them afterwards to being like, okay, this is why everybody hates New Yorkers, and I honestly hope I never deal with anybody like that ever again. Okay, for starters, I totally agree with the original poster. When they have someone like this who appears to be really nice and wonderful, but then at the slightest inconvenience, they turn into a monster and they try to get you fired. But while we're on that subject, in my opinion, I think it is incredibly unprofessional to start flirting with a guest and also insinuate that you want to join them afterwards once you get off the clock. That's really weird in my opinion, and I don't think that's okay in the slightest. I've worked in restaurants and I just don't think that's a good idea, and I think you're only setting yourself up for failure in some kind of way. But honestly, that's just a minor grievance in my opinion, because the way this lady acted towards you was super inappropriate. Seriously, not only was she late to her appointment for this restaurant, but also the entire group just sat there and did nothing the entire time. They waited and chatted or did something else instead of ordering their food at the end of the night. If I was late for a restaurant reservation, I would be absolutely apologetic to the staff and be like, okay, I'm gonna order really quick, I'm so sorry. But instead, this lady strolls in and doesn't even bat an eye. So that, along with her trying to get you fired, in my opinion, is super toxic, and you definitely did not deserve to deal with that. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for canceling my family vacation trip after my brother blatantly disrespected me and refused to apologize? Here's what happened. I'm a 36-year-old male, and I have a 30-year-old younger brother who we will call Jake. And when it comes to Jake, he has always had a bit of a chip on his shoulder. Growing up, Jake was rebellious and often got into trouble, which strained our relationship. But over the years, I've tried to mend fences and be a supportive brother. A few months ago, I came into a significant bonus at work, and I decided to treat my family to a luxurious vacation. I planned a week-long trip to a tropical resort, covering all expenses for my parents, Jake, and his girlfriend, who we will call Laura. Everyone was excited, and we started making preparations. I put a lot of effort into organizing the trip, including booking activities and making restaurant reservations. I also took care of the logistics, ensuring everyone would have a seamless experience. Despite our rocky past, I was genuinely looking forward to spending quality time with Jake and the rest of the family. About 2 weeks before the trip, we all gathered at our parents' house for dinner. During the meal, Jake started making snide comments about my job and my lifestyle. He insinuated that I was trying to buy the family's love with this trip and made several disrespectful remarks about how I handled my money. I tried to brush off his comments, but they just kept escalating. At one point, Jake accused me of being a show-off and said that I was only doing this trip to boost my own ego. And Laura laughed at his jokes, clearly supporting his behavior. I was hurt and very angry, but I kept my cool for the sake of our parents. After dinner, I pulled Jake aside and I told him that his comments were out of line and very hurtful. But he just brushed me off, saying I was too sensitive and that I needed to chill out. I was stunned by his lack of remorse and the clear disrespect that he showed. I went home that night feeling upset and very disrespected. I talked it over with my wife, who suggested that I reconsider the trip if Jake continued to treat me this way. I didn't want to ruin the family's excitement, but I also didn't want to spend a week being disrespected. Well, the next day, I called a family meeting to discuss the situation. situation. I calmly explained how hurtful Jake's comments were, and I asked him to please give me an apology. But Jake doubled down, saying that he was just joking and that I was overreacting. My parents tried to mediate, but it was clear Jake had no intention of apologizing. Feeling disrespected and unsupported, I made the difficult decision to cancel the trip. I informed the family that I could not, in good conscience, spend a week with someone who treated me with such blatant disrespect. My parents were disappointed but understood my decision. Jake, however, was furious and accused me of ruining the family's plan out of spite. Since then, our relationship has been even more strained. Jake has been bad-mouthing me to other family members and friends, painting me as the villain. And right now, I'm left wondering if I overreacted and should have just gone through with the trip for the sake of the family. What should I do? Honestly, in my opinion, I don't think you're in the wrong for deciding to cancel this trip, because Jake was definitely out of line. He was saying things that were very hurtful, and essentially he was making fun of you and really coming after you for no good reason. Like, this guy does know that you're paying for the entire trip, right? Why on earth would he bite the hand that feeds him, especially when you're trying to do something nice for the whole family? So no, I don't think you're in the wrong for choosing to step away, because the way he acted, in my opinion, was completely unacceptable. An entitled, greedy landlord tries to force my friend out of their house by raising the asking price by nearly $80,000, essentially pricing my friends out completely and risking them with the possibility of being homeless. So I banded together with my friends and I decided to get some revenge, as we sabotaged every single attempt these owners made at trying to sell this place. And as a result, my friends were able to buy this place for a far cheaper price than what these greedy jerks were trying to offer. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, gazumping occurs when an agent or seller accepts an offer you make to buy a property at an agreed price, but the property is sold to someone else. This usually happens when the vendor sells the property for a higher amount. And trust me, this word and this definition is going to be important later on. This entire situation happened 15 years ago, and it is one of the proudest moments of my life. My best friend and her husband have 5 kids together. They lived in an expensive city and rented an old 4-bedroom house for $400 per week. The house was very run down, with a disgusting kitchen and sink drains, but it was all they could afford at the time. Still, they made it work. The owner was a nice old lady who was extremely wealthy and very fond of my friend. She froze the rent for 5 years and promised to let them buy the house once they had saved enough to get a loan from the bank. Now, as she had helped other people in a similar way, they knew that they could trust her, and so they saved every cent that they could. It took them 5 years, but they finally told her that they were ready. But unfortunately, 2 days later, the nice old lady passed away, quite literally before anything was put in writing. Well, this is where the new owners step in, and they are the 4 children of this lady. Each one of them is extremely wealthy in their own right. I mean, they did inherit a huge portfolio of properties. When they first spoke to my friends, they assured them that the sale would still go through, but they would have to wait until probate had settled. Well, feeling confident, my friends started making some changes to the place. They started by stripping down the wallpaper, painting the walls, and making plans. Eventually and finally, the probate was settled, and the owners agreed to go ahead with the sale for the previous agreed price. My friends then applied for the loan, but much to their shock, it was refused. The owners had raised the asking price by $80,000 without telling my friends. And to make things even worse, the house would be put up on the open market. In 7 days, there would be an open house, and with the market the way it was, it would probably sell immediately. My friends were devastated. They might be able to borrow enough, but it would take longer than a week to get it. To make matters worse, property prices had soared recently, and rents had gone up a lot, while theirs had still been frozen. Not only were my friends going to struggle to get the money, but if the place was sold to someone else, and they were asked for a higher rent or be evicted, it would be nearly impossible to find an affordable place with more than 2 bedrooms. I was scared for my friends, but I was also incandescently angry. Those greedy jerks were some of the wealthiest people in the city. They were screwing over a struggling family for less than $20,000 each. They didn't need the money, it was pure greed, and it was totally obvious that they had always planned to do this. So, when my friends scrambled to come up with the money, I started plotting. I looked up advice on what helps to make a sale. We need to make the place as undesirable as possible without making my friends look like bad tenants. For starters, we moved all the furniture in from the walls, added some extra furniture, and borrowed ornaments and hung a load of motorcycle memorabilia on the walls. And we did this just to make the place feel more smaller. Also, my friend boiled a head of cabbage on the stove, and we sprayed ammonia around the front and back doors, because that way it'll smell like all the neighborhood cats have been marking their territory. We also poured 24 rotten eggs down the drain to make it smell like sewer gas. We then obtained a moldy old couch and dumped it in front of the neighbors across the road with their permission. We also started calling other friends for help. Anybody with a loud and crappy car was asked to do a few laps in front of the block during the open day. The street was unusually busy that day, and everyone we knew found a reason to drive by, so it was practically rush hour. We also called all of our mates out from the rugby club, and a big portion of our club are very large men. The next door neighbor set up a barbecue in their front yard, and we offered free food and cheap beer. Well, they came on motorcycles wearing the roughest gear they had, and there was definitely quite a crowd. Now, a lot of people showed up for the open day, and quite a few were in and out within minutes. One lady sat in her car and watched the party next door before completely driving away. Now, the one person who stayed any length of time was brave enough to start up a conversation with someone leaving the party. He asked if they were often there, and he was told that every couple of weeks or so, they have an after-party morning, and the party the night before was 3 doors up. The partygoers also helpfully mentioned the troublesome drains that are always getting blocked by the tree roots, and they cause the place to really stink. And after this potential buyer heard that, he left without making any kind of offer. So eventually, my friends were the only ones to make an offer. They still had to pay more than what they planned, but not as much as these greedy jerks wanted. My friends then signed the papers and paid the deposit that day. So when a brave buyer eventually stepped forward and put an offer down for $30,000 more than my friends, there was nothing the owners can do about it, as there are strict anti-gazumping laws. And I really wish I could have been there in person to see the look on these owners' faces when they eventually found out. Wow, I love it when people get some solid revenge on people who are clearly very greedy. Like seriously, just look at the way they treated the original poster's friends. They were so looking forward to having this place to live in and to have a place of their own that they could buy. But instead, these crappy people tried to raise the price and essentially force your friends out on the street. Like that is so unacceptable, and it's honestly so ridiculous. So I personally love this kind of revenge because people like this, in my opinion, absolutely deserve it. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My job is incompetent in a way that I've never seen before with any previous job I've ever worked. And after only working here for 2 weeks, I'm honestly considering walking out and never coming back in. Because at this point, I'm so frustrated that I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, honestly, things at my job are a complete mess, and I really just need to talk it out. For starters, 2 tables came in and already they ran out of gumbo in the back. The customers had to wait 30 minutes for it, and these were coursed meals, so they had to eat all their other food and finally get 1 cup of gumbo at the end. And at another table, we had to give free appetizers for theirs. I mean, have we never heard of having any kind of prep? Then on a 3-top, I put in 2 taco dinners and a pasta dish. The kitchen then hands me 2 of their entrees, the taco and pasta, but we don't use trays and they have these weirdly shaped dishes, so it's only like 2 plates per trip. When I returned for the other tacos, they were nowhere to be found. I asked the assistant manager where they are, and he just looks at the ticket and he goes, I don't know. And it's like, what are you talking about? Just read the tickets. Another time, I was having to pick things out of the salads because the kitchen just ignored all the modifications. I'm always having to ask them to change out sides that they got wrong, and having to ask them to switch sizes from cup to bowl because they got those wrong as well. Like seriously, can they not read? And before anyone would ask, the staff is fully English speaking. No one there even speaks Spanish, so it makes no sense how the Hispanic chefs from my other jobs can do literally everything perfectly, but these guys simply can't do it. And I was catching all of these things thankfully before I left the kitchen. Then we were out of literally everything drink-wise and a lot of our food. Oh, you want a very specific drink? Sorry, we don't have that either. Literally on some of the tables, there was only 1 person at each table who actually got what they initially wanted. If they wanted shrimp tacos, I would have to say to them, sorry, but we don't have any shrimp. And then the other servers would be like, you have to check to see what's out. And I'm like, yeah, but that list should have been like 1 to 3 items max, not 80% of the stupid menu. Don't talk at me like I'm the one who's unprepared here. Now here's the thing. I have only been there less than 2 weeks, but from day 1, I was kind of already suspicious about the place because they don't operate efficiently. There's not even an ice well behind the bar, nor is there even an ice maker. They buy bagged ice, which is just so stupid. And they have 3 sinks, yet they don't do the tri-sink method, and they only use 1 for soapy water and 1 of them for clean and no sanitizing. Even the shady club that I used to work at that illegally sold liquor used the tri-sink method with sanitizer. And on top of that, not 1 of the hand washing sinks has soap. None of them. If you want to wash your hands, you have to go to the bathrooms. And I don't even think they're washing their hands, as I saw the other server go straight from taking out the trash to a table. And that is seriously just so disgusting. Not to mention that I saw a mouse run running around the dining room, literally right next to tables being used on my first day. I was very close to walking out today because, to be honest, it's just ridiculous how unprepared they are, and that really makes me look bad to customers. But not that it matters anyways, because we have a tip-sharing system. It's honestly just one red flag after the other, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Wow, that job sounds awful, and if I was in your shoes, I would be looking for another job. That place does not sound like a good place to work. Like seriously, they have rats in the restaurant, they're never prepared with any of their food, no one's washing their hands, and everybody's getting everything wrong all the time. And I totally understand where you're coming from. Here you are on the front line trying to figure this stuff out, and it only makes you look bad. It doesn't reflect badly on the host or any of the chefs in the back. This literally only comes back to you because you're the most forward-facing customer service rep there is in the restaurant, and that is so unfair to you. You're not even asking a lot of them, you're just asking them to do their job, but they can't even do that, and that would honestly drive me crazy. But the biggest red flag for me is the fact that you've seen all of this with only working there for 2 weeks. Like, this is not something you want to see this early into a job, and in my opinion, I think this should be more than enough for you to try and find another job, because this place sounds like the absolute worst. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own stories. My best friend was a complete jerk on our vacation, and I'm honestly at such a loss on what to do about our friendship. Here's what happened. Okay, this happened about a month ago, but I'm still in disbelief about this and I need to rant. Basically, my friend, who we will call John, was invited to a family vacation when we were both teenagers, and he was a complete jerk the entire time, but I really want to know what everybody else would think. To begin, I had to wake him up, which is not too big of a deal, but it is a bit annoying. And then when we went kayaking, he fell asleep in the back and basically made me chauffeur him around the lake. And to me, this was also passable because it was early and I liked having the workout. But after we were done, this is what really started to anger me. We used to tandem kayak, so it was a bit heavy, so me and my mom had to both carry it up the rocky path while he carried the oars. He is smaller, but he left us behind and just waited at the top of the hill staring at us. When my mom pointed this out to me, it made me a bit mad, but this is the tip of the iceberg. On the final day, John made a very offhanded comment to my mom, and he complained how we didn't do something all day every day. And this comment really bothered me, my mom, and my dad especially, because he came for free. And that made me think of some other things that I glanced over, but we'll get to that in a bit. On the day that we had to get out, I again had to wake him up, which again, that's fine, but what wasn't okay was that he had his headphones on, he sat on the couch and was playing on his Nintendo Switch and didn't respond to anybody, and he did the bare minimum while only packing his stuff and only his stuff. At one point, my mom asked him if he wanted something to eat, but she got no response from him, even after repeating herself a second time. Now, my mom hates repeating herself, so this made her very mad. Now me, taking note of this, tried to pick up the slack in any way that I could. When we went outside to finish packing and throwing things away, he just stood there meandering about in his own little world, and when we got home, I had to open his door and snap him back to reality, only for him to then go inside, sit down, and go back to his own little world. I mean, he didn't even bring in his own stuff. And the cherry on top of everything is that he didn't say thank you, and neither did his dad. So obviously this is pretty bad as is, but trust me, it gets way worse. After he left, we unpacked, and at some point, my mom caught me in the kitchen, and the rant of the century took place. First of all, and most important, he was very, very rude to my mom. As I mentioned before, he ignored her regularly, but he would also interrupt her when she was talking to me and start to take over the conversation. And there's even more. At one point during the vacation, I played a little joke by putting one of his flip-flops on top of the fridge, which is harmless, right? Well, apparently that was a wrong thing for me to do. I then completely forgot about this flip-flop, and funny enough is that he lost his other one under the bed, and when he couldn't find the flip-flops on the last couple of days, we literally searched everywhere. My mom one day came in the room while I was in the shower and asked John if he looked under the bed, and he said yes, and my mom didn't think that he did, so she gets on the floor and looks under the bed, and there's one of the flip-flops. She then says, "You looked under the bed?" John nods his head, and my mom says, "Why don't you check again?" He then leans down, still on the bed, but she says, "No, get on the floor," with John doing so reluctantly. John then looks my mom dead in the eyes and says, "Oh, I didn't lift that." And for context, the sheets of the bed hung over the sides of the bed, so he didn't look under the bed. He just looked at the sheet and thought that that was looking. There were also smaller things that made us very mad. Like on day one, I noticed that he was a bit smelly. And sure, puberty is weird, so I decided to mention this in a polite way, but he just denied it, and I told him he was wrong. My mom also noticed it too, so we decided to run to the store and just get him a cheap thing of deodorant. But then he never used it once, and we think he took took it, but we really are just not sure. John also packed his bags terribly. We went to the mountains and it is the summer in the United States, and for that type of weather, you'd expect mostly short sleeves and shorts, and maybe 1 to 2 sets of warmer clothing just in case. We also told John's mom to bring waterwear, like swim trunks and shoes, and he did bring the trunks, but we had to buy him shoes, and we also had to buy him shoes because he only had his flip-flops. He didn't just not bring proper clothing, he also didn't bring his own shampoo, body wash, or washwear, like a washcloth or a loofah. John also regularly interrupted a joke story that I was telling, and he would constantly interrupt my train of thought and had the audacity to ask questions afterwards. He also told my mom to get more sweet tea on the second to last day. However, I think the true worst thing is his lack of hygiene. He had to be constantly reminded to shower, and then would get in the hot tub, which is gross, but I seriously don't understand how in your teenage years, you need to be reminded to constantly shower and brush your teeth. So honestly, I'm looking for some kind of opinion. I haven't even listed everything just to try and keep this lighter, but seriously, what do you think? Am I blowing this out of proportion? And how should I process my friendship moving forward? What should I do? Okay, in my opinion, I think John is one of those people where, yeah, you took him on vacation, but this is the last time that is ever happening again. Like, this is a lesson learned that you could probably only figure out the hard way. Because I'm sure your family never anticipated that John would be this much of a mess. Like, seriously, you guys are gonna be hiking and doing all kinds of like outdoor stuff, and he only shows up in flip-flops? Like, seriously, how is that in any way, shape, or form a responsible way to handle things? So no, I don't think you blew this out of proportion or anything like that, and I think your assessment of John really is exactly as it is. He doesn't sound super reliable, and it's probably not someone you ever want to take on vacation again, because from the sounds of it, this does not sound like someone I would want to deal with for a second time. My parents make me feel worthless, and I'm now honestly dreading going back to America, because right now I'm so stressed out that I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm currently in Japan, returning tomorrow, and I'm already feeling like my life is going back to the dumpster the more I talk to my parents. The stress train begins with my parents already making me feel like a failure when I'm just looking for support. I've sacrificed so much for them, but it's still never enough. I was thinking of doing online classes to get a head start for next semester, but since I'm so close to graduation, there aren't many options left online for my advanced levels. So I asked my mom for assistance because she is a college advisor at a different school, but instead of actual help, she sent me some very belittling text messages. I said to her, I think I can handle 2 more classes because most of my classes are online this semester, and they honestly seem easy. Do you think you could help me find these classes online at different schools? My advisor said that they do not offer these online in the fall here. My mom responded by saying, this is why I was trying to get you to do more hours the past 2 years. So I said to her, I did 15 hours every semester since I started school, but okay, I guess never mind. My mom then left me on red. I understand I was rude, but I felt completely insulted by that. Will they ever understand what I've done to get where I'm at? I mean, I'm recovering dyslexic and extremely ADHD, and being where I am should be a miracle, but it's just never good enough. I went to community college to save money, and it was free where I went, while they let my sister go straight to a 4-year college. I took 15 hours every semester, and the minimum at my university is 9 hours. And I also did winter and summer classes. My sister failed the same class 4 times and others, while I've never failed a single class. I've had steady jobs and I've never been fired. I'm currently working full-time at the university to save money, and yet my sister just got fired from her 3rd job in 2 months. She can't make friends to find a roommate for college, so I offered for her to live with me, even though she's done terrible things to me. The only reason I'm doing this is to help my parents save some money, but despite all of this, we're seen as equally bad, and I'm considered lazy for not doing more. I'm being held at a completely different standard, and it's making me realize that being here in Japan with very limited contact has relieved my stress because I can use not contacting my family as a tangible excuse. I feel bad for feeling this way because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, for starters, I think it's very nice of you to want to like help out your parents and like help them save money, but also you would be a fool for letting your sister live with you. Like seriously, she sounds like an absolute mess, and she does not sound like she has her life together in the slightest. She's been fired multiple times in like 2 months, she's failing her classes, and she just literally is not taking any of this seriously. And yet on the other hand, you are doing all these good things despite having so many setbacks in front of you. And with that, I think it would be a really bad idea to let your sister into your home, because the way she's acting, in my opinion, is very irresponsible, and you do not deserve to go down the same path that she did, all for the sake of trying to help your parents save money. Am I the jerk for not checking on my friend after she suddenly dropped out of my wedding party. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I was very excited to ask two of my friends who I see the most to be in my wedding party. Let's call them Lisa and Shelly. They both said yes and it was great. But 3 months in, about 4 months before the wedding, Lisa said that she couldn't afford it and has dropped out. And I said it was alright, but I was a bit hurt. I had so far asked them to buy a dress that was maybe about $100 to $120, and I had paid for drinks and food at the one meeting we've had. Well, Lisa and her boyfriend both work and make decent money, and they pay low rent since I rented them a suite as I manage a building, so I was confused that they couldn't afford it. Shelly isn't working much, so I said I could help her pay for her dress if it would help. After Lisa dropped out, I asked Shelly if she was still okay doing it. Her and Lisa are very close, and also I just wanted to be sure. Well, she said that she did, and that was great. That same night on our group chat with the 4 other girls in the wedding party, Shelly started texting that it was crazy that I expected them to pay $100 for a dress to be in the wedding, and then she dropped out of the chat. I was really hurt, and I felt very confused why 2 of my closest friends, who I've always been there for, wouldn't step up to be a part of my wedding when I would do anything to be in theirs if they asked me. Now, as my wedding isn't far, I needed to replace one of them soon, and I knew the perfect girl to do it. So I asked her the next day so that she could have time to prepare. She was so happy, and she said that she would be honored. I had wanted to ask her, but we already had 6 people each, so I was happy that I got the chance to after what had just happened. It honestly made the hurt of my 2 best friends dropping out a little bit less. I didn't need to replace Lisa because her boyfriend was in the wedding party too, so they both just dropped out. After about a week of nothing from Shelly, I get a text message saying how awful it is that I didn't check on her seeing how she was doing or to make sure that she didn't want to do it before I replaced her. And I am honestly absolutely floored that she is angry with me about this. She has since sent me text messages saying how hurt she is and that she doesn't know me anymore, and has started saying bad things about my fiance to people they both know. And after this, I don't even know if their friendship is worth salvaging. So am I the worst friend ever? Or is it normal that I'm thinking maybe she never was my friend? What should I do? Wow, the fact that they dropped out over a $100 dress and then tried to be like, wow, you didn't even check on me. Like seriously, do they not realize the original poster is getting ready for a wedding? Like they don't have time to coddle all of your feelings. Like that is such a selfish way of acting, and honestly, the original poster doesn't deserve that. So no, you're definitely not the jerk in this situation because your friend is acting incredibly spoiled and very entitled, and you do not deserve that in the slightest. An entitled Karen tries to steal my walker right from underneath me, claiming that it's not mine and that I'm actually stealing it from the store we just walked out of. Things got so bad that this lady actually got the manager involved in some kind of desperate attempt to make me hand over my property. And I'm honestly still blown away by this interaction, as well as the audacity of this Karen to say the things that she said to me. Here's what happened. Okay, for starters, I had a stroke 6 years ago, meaning that my balance and vision got messed up pretty bad. I can walk maybe 20 to 25 feet on a flat surface without any kind of help, but I need my walker to take long walks, and I take it with me whenever I go somewhere. Now, I normally have weekly groceries delivered to me at my apartment, but every month or 6 weeks, depending on schedules, my mom will take me to a specialty grocery store where I can get a lot of prepackaged meals that I just have to put in the microwave for a while. So we were on one of those trips, and we were waiting in the checkout line. Now, the walker that the insurance covers was a piece of cheap white plastic. So last Christmas, my mom bought me one that is black steel and titanium composition. It also has a pouch on the back for storing things, and when I need a break, I can lock the wheels and it has a fold-out bench that I can sit on. So while my groceries were being checked out, I folded out the bench and I sat down waiting. When we were done, I got up and unlocked the wheels while my mom rolled out with my grocery cart. Now, I had barely gotten maybe 5 feet when the entitled Karen of this story walked up and grabbed my walker. She said to me, "I'll be taking this." And I just said no, and I jerked it away from her and proceeded to follow my mom out to the parking lot. Now, usually, my mom will load the groceries in the car while I leave the walker on the side, and I walk my way around to the passenger seat. And then after loading the groceries, my mom collapses the walker and puts it on top of the groceries. Well, this entitled Karen followed us out to the car and was literally waiting there tapping her foot, all while we were loading our groceries. I did not trust her, so I just stood there holding onto my walker. My mom said, "Go ahead, get in, it's unlocked." And I just shook my head no, and suddenly pointed the lady as to why I wasn't getting in. Well, thankfully my mom understood and finished loading the groceries. When she was done, she came up to me and folded down the walker while I walked to the passenger passenger side door. My mom folded down the walker, put it on top of the bags in the car, and was closing the door. But right then, this entitled Karen started screaming, "You just stole store property." Now, I don't know if someone had gotten him or what, but a manager type person came out and asked what was going on. The entitled Karen was screaming about how we were stealing the walker and that she needed to use it. The manager then asked my mom about it, and she said straight up that it was mine, and even showed him the plaques bolted on it that have my name, emergency contacts, and my medications and the schedule I was on, just in case I needed them. Well, this entitled Karen wasn't having it. She kept screaming, "I need it right now. You are done with it. Give it to me." The manager then eventually told her that it was mine. It had information on it that pertained only to me, and that if she needed help, they could find her a mobility scooter or something. Well, this entitled Karen didn't like this, and suddenly went from a shrieking harpy to a sweet old lady. She said, "Well, maybe she could leave it here and I could use it and leave it when I'm done for them to come back and get it." So the manager asked us, well, would you be okay with that? And my mom, knowing that we would never see it again, said that we would not be doing that. We had other places that we need to go. Well, when we said that, this entitled Karen started screaming again. So we decided to just drive off. And I don't know how it ended for the manager, but I really hope that he survived that crazy interaction. Wow, this Karen really upsets me. Seriously, who walks up to someone and says, "Oh, I want that right now. Give me that walker, I need it more than you." Like seriously, what is she doing? Not only does she not work at this store, but she's also following someone who clearly needs it and is trying to act like, "Oh yeah, you're just stealing." As if her accusing you of stealing is somehow gonna make you hand it over to her. And you were 100% right. If you left that walker for her to use while you were gone, you would never see that thing ever again. This lady screams as some kind of dishonest monster who obviously would follow somebody out to the parking lot to try and steal their belongings. So good for you and your mom for standing up for yourselves, because the way this Karen was acting is absolutely insane. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my mom that I will not follow her weird house rules and that she and her husband need to admit that they messed up? Here's what happened. I'm an 18-year-old male, and when my parents divorced, I was 6 years old. My younger sister was 4 years old, and my younger brother was 3. They shared custody of us ever since then 50-50, but now I don't have a custody thing set up because I'm an adult now, and I'm no longer a part of any of that. And at the moment, I stay with my dad. My mom remarried when I was 11, and my siblings were 9 and 8. Her husband was divorced and had 2 kids of his own who were 8 and 6 years old. He had primary custody of them, but in the summer, they would get longer with their mom. My mom and her husband moved in together a month before the wedding, and from that point on, they created these really strict and really weird rules that basically made sure that we were never a blended family and that there was always some kind of animosity. And here are just a few of those rules. They would say that if you want permission for something, you have to ask your new parent and not the regular one. Also, no biological siblings only playing together. Everyone has to mix in. There was also a ban on bedroom doors because they wanted to see that we're mixing in. It was also required that every day you would tell people in the family one thing you love about them. You also must give everyone hugs before leaving the house, and also you can't say someone's a stepbrother or stepsister or even a half-sibling in the house. There were others, but those were the most damaging ones. My mom told me that she wanted us to be a happy blended family, and she did not want favoritism of parents or siblings. She told me I didn't just have a brother and a sister anymore, but I had 2 of each, and now I also had a second dad. And they enforced this too, or at least tried to. The hugs never took off, and I never told her husband or his kids stuff that I loved about them, and I never loved being with them. These rules led to fighting, and it also pretty much caused chaos if they took us places. We were all grounded pretty much all the time at their house. We also started doing stuff to make sure family vacations couldn't happen together. Her husband's kids would make plans with their mom to go to her for weeks when my mom and her husband had vacation plans booked. My siblings and I would ask dad to book his vacation first and then put it in their app. My mom and her husband would also get so frustrated, and they'd try to give us these talks. Mom would come to me and say that I was the oldest and I needed to set an example, and now that I no longer go to my mom's house, my siblings don't want to either, and they make a bigger deal out of it. My mom called me yesterday and told me that I needed to help create the family unit that they fought so hard for before it's too late. She mentioned me being the oldest again, and how I should be there for a week when we can all be a family. But I told her no, I don't want to. We are not a family. I told her that they messed up. They need to admit it, and they need to find a way forward, because none of the kids want to be a part of any kind of family that has this many rules? Mom then started crying down the phone to me, asking why I wanted to ruin her marriage and rejected the family that they were trying to be. She was asking how I could say that they failed when we wouldn't even try. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you didn't do anything wrong, and you're definitely not the jerk. Your mom and her husband sound obnoxious, and she's enforcing rules that literally nobody wants to follow. Instead of allowing this to happen organically, she's literally trying to force it in some kind of weird power play. And that's crazy to me. You can't just force that and be like, oh yeah, we're a family now. It's time to hug each other before we enter or leave the house. Like, I don't know about you, but that would drive me crazy. And if anything, it's just gonna have the exact opposite effect. Like, those kids aren't gonna like each other. They're gonna learn to hate and like despise each other pretty quickly. So no, you didn't do anything wrong. And I think the fact that you're 18 is probably the best part about this story, because at the end of the day, you really can decide where you do and don't want to live. And I know if I was in your shoes, I definitely would not want to live in that house. Am I the jerk for tidying up my son's apartment as a surprise? Because right now he is very angry, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Me and my husband, both in our 60s, asked if we could spend a night at my son's apartment while he was away. He lives in a different city that was along the way to the destination of our vacation. Well, he said yes, and then he gave us the keys. He told us beforehand that he has gotten some new furniture and is not quite sure how he will arrange it. He told us that the apartment was a bit messy, but if it didn't bother us, then we could borrow his apartment. When we got to the apartment, I decided that I should surprise him and clean the apartment for him. His carpets were a little dusty, so me and my husband carried them to our car to clean them in our own backyard once we got back home, because my son lives in a block of flats. I also put some of his new furniture in places that I thought looked nice so that he wouldn't have to do that himself. We told our son a week later when he came to visit us to get his keys, but he got visibly upset. He told us that we should have asked his permission to take his carpets, arrange his belongings, and move the furniture, or at least given him a heads up beforehand instead of doing this behind his back. He told us that it was disrespectful towards him and his personal space for us to move his stuff without permission, and that it is not something guests should be doing in another person's home. So are we jerks for tidying up my son's apartment as a surprise? What should we do? Okay, in my opinion, and maybe I'm alone in this, but yes, I absolutely think you're the jerk here. You really should not try to mess with someone else's house just because you're like, ooh, I'm gonna do it as a surprise. Like, rearranging someone's personal belongings is really disrespectful and, in my opinion, very violating of somebody's privacy, because that's not why you were there in the first place. So for you to move things around and try to pretend like, oh yeah, I know what you really want. This is something I would like, so you'll like it. Like, that is so annoying, and I would be upset as well. And yes, your son is 100% right. You did this behind his back. And in my opinion, his anger is absolutely justified, because he trusted you to stay there and be a good house guest. But now he probably thinks you went through all of his stuff and possibly snooped around looking for stuff that is none of your business. Because in my opinion, intentions do not excuse poor behavior. And I really think the way that you and your husband acted was completely inappropriate. Am I the jerk for cutting off my toxic father and his wife after they treated me and my girlfriend so poorly in the past? But now that our baby is born, my dad and his wife are trying to work their ways back into my life. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 21-year-old male, and honestly, this story has a lot of backstory, but I will try to keep this as short as I can. My parents divorced when I was 13 years old. My dad, let's call him Bob, quickly found a girlfriend who we will call Karen. Karen is 7 years older than Bob, and she is already a grandma, and I'm not really a fan of her. As a quick character description, she is very intolerant, especially with other people's opinions, and does not accept obvious boundaries and is very demanding. Let me give you a couple of examples. She'll say things like, "Your mother really didn't do a good job with teaching you manners." She also said towards my 16-year-old sister, "You are not dressing ladylike, and you are a bit chubby," even though, by the way, she is very skinny. When I tried to say something about that, my dad immediately put it down, and he would just say that she is right. When I got to know her, I didn't think much of it, but through the years, her behavior became more annoying. I couldn't do anything with my dad alone, and I noticed a character swap in my dad. When I was a child, he was a very loving and caring dad. We used to do a lot of sports and fishing, and we spent a lot of quality time together. Well, it really changed last year. We were on a trip, and I was told multiple times that I should be so grateful that I'm allowed on it, even though it was my birthday present. The relationship between Bob and Karen also seemed a bit off. She is clearly in control, and I would dare to say that she is gaslighting him. Over the years with Karen, he distanced himself a bit, and also tried to exclude my mom from family events, and did spend more time time with Karen's family than his own children. But honestly, this all leads to my main point. My girlfriend and I found out that she was unexpectedly pregnant. This was a big thing because we are still very young, and she was still in her last year of high school and I was in university, and Bob and Karen were supposed to marry 3 months after we found out. So this is where the drama begins. At first, we didn't plan to keep our baby, but it all came along different on the day that we might not keep our baby, if you know what I mean. Long story short, during the procedure, my girlfriend had a lot of remorse and was very afraid. So when she was going to the room for the surgery, in there she had a panic attack. So the doctor decided that he wouldn't be able to perform on the circumstances. It was very shocking news, since it was the last day that we could do it legally. This was a very tough time for our relationship, as well as very challenging for her mental health, because we didn't plan to become parents so young. For reference, we are 20 and 18 years old. Now, my dad was perfectly aware of the situation, as I called him multiple times crying. Well, not even 2 weeks after the surgery day, we got a call from Karen and Bob telling us that my girlfriend was not invited to the wedding as it would take away the focus from them. They were not willing to find any other ways to solve that differently. We asked if there would be the possibility to tell the family before the wedding and more, but they were clearly not changing their minds. My dad even went so far as to tell me that he was upset that he didn't get the chance to tell my grandparents about the pregnancy because I did already tell them myself. Well, because my girlfriend was not invited, I was clearly upset, and I tried to tell them that I thought it wasn't very appropriate to do that, especially in our situation. But Karen told me that I was being very ungrateful since she had done a lot for me. But honestly, even to this day, I don't know at all what she's done for me. Anyways, the following conversations were awful. My dad told me that I did upset Karen and said I should apologize to her. I asked him I was willing to do that if he told me why she was so mad, but he just shouted at me that I should know why and to just do it. At this point, I just didn't want to say sorry, especially without knowing the reason why. My dad told me that Karen's feelings were very hurt and it was all my fault, and she decided to not talk to me anymore and basically give me the silent treatment until I apologize. So I told my dad that I was also very hurt, but he responded that this was not relevant at all since they apparently never uninvited her and we just made up a false accusation. Now, I was ready to apologize for whatever was going on as long as one apology came back as well. Well, apparently this was an unacceptable suggestion because the shouting all started again. We then decided to pause the issue since our relationship was falling apart. When we came back to it a couple months later, I decided to put up some boundaries because the fights were very emotionally draining. I told him that I wouldn't apologize if nothing came back, and I would not accept any shouting any longer. Additionally, he should accept my feelings and my side of the story, and we should just move on as I did. The response again was more shouting. "Who do you think you are? You are not in the position to determine anything. I am your father and much wiser than you are." And by the way, he sees himself as incredibly wise and knowledgeable, and is disappointed that no one believes him. Well, needless to say, their behavior didn't change, so I would not take his calls anymore, and he even tried to gaslight me with some messages. A week after my daughter was born, Bob and Karen wanted to come because they wanted to see her first, but I declined, partly because it felt entitling, and they weren't really interested in the entire pregnancy. They didn't even ask if it was okay for us. They expected us to accommodate everything. After one disgusting voice message, after I left a negative review on his weird therapy course he's been taking, I decided that this was a bit too much, and I cut contact with them for 6 months. Meanwhile, my sister has told me that he hasn't changed and that Karen even wishes us bad luck, all in some kind of weird ploy so that we will come back begging. Luckily, we are doing very well with our baby, and we are honestly so happy. My remaining family is on my side, but my grandparents urged me to get into contact again. So am I the jerk for cutting contact with them and therefore not letting Bob see his grandchild? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk. Bob and his stupid wife Karen sound absolutely obnoxious. They're intrusive, they're very rude to you, and they treated your pregnant girlfriend like garbage pretty much from the get-go. Like, that is completely unacceptable, and there is no good excuse for that. And I really think you're right about them being interested in seeing your baby. They didn't care about this pregnancy and even tried to punish your girlfriend because she was pregnant. Like, this is all so backwards, it's not even funny. So for them to react in the way they're reacting right now, as well as all the gaslighting and mistreatment, it all adds up to them just not being good parents and people that you definitely do not want in your life. So you know what? I don't blame you for cutting them off because your dad and his wife are super toxic. And unless they make some major, like, groundbreaking changes, if I was in your shoes, I would never let them around my my kid? Am I overreacting for wanting to quit my job after my boss told me that he knew it was a wrong decision to hire me? And after dealing with his awful treatment for so long, I'm seriously at my breaking point, and right now I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 17-year-old female and I really need some advice. So I have a big problem right now. I work at a small family restaurant during the summer holidays, and it honestly hasn't been a great experience so far. At the beginning, one of the waiters touched me inappropriately, who was the older son, who was also supposed to handle the bar. Well, nothing was done about it, and now both of the bosses hate me. He is Italian and a massive jerk, and she is a stewardess and honestly not very nice sometimes. Today was really awful because the son was on vacation for the second time this month for a week, and the boss lady had to take over the bar, but she wasn't there on Thursday and Friday because she had to fly, so I had to take over the bar. And that's not a problem in itself, but today was really busy. With the boss lady and her son, glasses are everywhere after 5 minutes because they hardly do anything. I didn't want to get in trouble with the boss, so I worked really hard to keep everything clean. By the way, I often have severe headaches, and today they were particularly bad. Anyways, I cleaned up everything and asked at 10 if I could leave now, but my boss said no. I should still do the dishwasher and asked if I could stay until 10:30, and I said yes because it wasn't really a question from him but more of an order. So I finished everything, but at that point, I felt really sick and very dizzy. Then my 2 coworkers came and brought me 2 fully loaded trays with even more glasses. I then started crying, more because I was really tired and it seemed like the work would never end. My stupid boss then got really upset and said that it was a bad decision to hire me, that we only had a 4-day week anyways, and that we only made my dessert. He went on saying that I had left early recently, but that was a month ago and not recently at all. And besides that, I stayed half an hour longer on Tuesday. He then said that there would be others who would do the work if I couldn't handle it. He then said quite angrily that I should leave now, and then went back to the kitchen. Anyways, on Friday, I get my tips, and when I asked him for it after a lot of hesitation, because I was really scared of him, he said to me, "Oh, but you can ask for that?" I then drove home in tears and had a really bad panic attack. My mom and brother asked what was wrong, and when I answered, my brother immediately went back to the kitchen to look at his phone or something. I think I totally overreacted or something like that. The reason is that this has happened before, and he is generally really mean to me, and I have to say the boss lady isn't much better. I only have 3 more days to work there since Wednesday will be my last day, but I really just don't want to go back. It's just that I sold 2 pairs of earrings to my coworkers, and I wanted to give them to them on Monday, and I would like to say goodbye to a few others. I'm only 17, and I'm only supposed to work until 10 o'clock. I really just want to know if I'm in the wrong here. Is this my fault again, like always? What should I do? Okay, first off, no, you didn't do anything wrong, but also as someone who has worked in situations like this, where you have toxic people running the show who are clearly taking advantage of you, I think it's really important to remember that these people are absolute losers, and you can find a better job literally tomorrow. Like, just think about the way this guy's treating you. He's working you down to the bone. He is overdoing it and forcing so much on your plate, literally just because he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to give this to his family members. He wants to make the girl who's going to quit in 3 days do all of the work as much as possible. So in my opinion, if that doesn't show that he does not care about you in the slightest, and that he is only going to make your life miserable for these next few days, then seriously, nothing will. It's also really important to know that people like this have no hold over your career. Like, sure, you work there for a little bit, and you probably are going to use them as some kind of like resume filler spot, but you do not have to use them as a reference or anything like that. So with that in mind, and honestly, you can do whatever you want to do, you are under no obligation to stick around and do exactly as they say. You really could quit and not come back for your last few days if you really wanted to. Like, what are they going to do about it? Like, seriously, think about that for a second. They're making your life miserable, and I guarantee you can find a better job than what these idiots are giving you, because these jobs are literally a dime a dozen. And in my opinion, I just don't think you should put yourself through that ever again. An entitled Karen falsely claims that we tried to poison her at our restaurant, and even goes as far as lying that she's not only having a heart attack, but also going to call the police unless she gets what she wants. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened back on Christmas Eve of 2021. I was only in that day to do final preparations for the big day, to finalize and double check all the pre-orders, and to start write the running orders. Basically, it was going to be a very busy day. I pop out from the office to the floor to grab myself a final coffee, as I expect to finish my admin in the next hour, and that's right when I see the chef standing at a table. So at this point, I know this is either really good or really bad. But then the chef walks off with their plates, so that's when I'm thinking, okay, this this is really bad. I get the rundown from the chef, and the couple, who is a man maybe in his 40s and his mother who's maybe in their 70s, accused her of trying to poison them because their sausage was cut in half. So I head over to the table. They give me the same story. Your chef cut the sausage open and tried to check if it was cooked, so that clearly means that she was trying to poison us. Okay, for starters, that's actually just how the dish is presented, and the sausage is sliced horizontally and then propped up on itself. And secondly, if the chef had cut it open to check if it was cooked, then they would have seen it was before they served it to you. So if anything, you are more safe this way. And also, this is literally why we have probes. They then told me that they wanted red wine gravy, and I said to them, well, as you can see on our menu, we don't sell red wine gravy. These people then said, then why did your chef say that she was making some in the kitchen? And the reasoning for that was because our Christmas Day menu tomorrow has red wine gravy on it. So they said to me, okay, so give us some of that. But I said no, because that's literally being pre-ordered, and it has been for months. They then go for the entitled statement of, oh, well, I don't see why we can't have it, which doesn't make sense because someone else has already ordered and paid for it. So yeah, I'm gonna give it to them instead of you. They then start telling me about how distressing this is for his mother, who has a heart condition, and that now she's having a heart attack. I said to them, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Please let me call you an ambulance. Well, when I said that, they said to me, no, that's not necessary. So I think to myself, oh, okay, that's real convenient. Anyways, I then tell them that I'm not going to charge them for anything, and that's because this is part of our guest satisfaction guarantee. Well, they refused and say that they will pay full price, and I suspected that they wanted to do this so that they could say that they paid for food that was stolen away from them, but I simply refused. They then said to me, well, we're just gonna leave the money on the table. But I respond by saying, okay, well, I've already told you that I've wiped your bill, so that is already dealt with. Therefore, any money left I will definitely view as gratuity. They then shoot their head over to me and say, we are not tipping you. They then started recording me and asking me to explain myself, but I really don't think they expected me to respond in the way that I did. I said to the camera, hi there, I'm the restaurant manager, and it's currently the 24th of December, 2021, and here's the situation as follows. But before I could even go any further, my favorite part about all of this is that he tells me he's going to call the police. He then dials a number on his phone, and I genuinely do not know how this happened, but then one of my waitresses pops her head around the corner from the host stand and says, I'm sorry, but it looks like you've called our restaurant phone. And at that point, I had to turn my head away to stop from laughing. They then came back with a typical, you've just ruined Christmas for us. And I just thought to myself, yeah, well, you haven't exactly made mine any better. I've still never seen that video pop up anywhere, which really makes me sad, but this is honestly one of the most unbelievable experiences I've ever had at this restaurant. Yeah, those people were very clearly trying to scam you and your restaurant out of money, or at least trying to have some kind of like smear campaign against you and everybody else there. Like seriously, they not only lied about food poisoning and also having a heart attack, but also said, I'm gonna call the police. Like all these weird veiled threats just to try and get what they want. So good for you for standing your ground and not taking this for another second, because these people were clearly just trying to scam you. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for scolding my wife's nephew in public after he consistently and constantly kept misbehaving just to try and make me, my wife, or everybody else frustrated? Because right now, I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, I need to start off by saying that my wife and I disagree on this. She said that what I did was pretty messed up, so I'll try to explain as neutrally as I can. We are on vacation taking our kids to visit her nephews. The relevant parts are that there are 5 kids ranging in ages from 9 to 16 years old. The 12-year-old, who is my wife's nephew, is the one that I supposedly snapped at. I rented a large home so everyone could stay together, and I had tried to redirect his negative behavior until it kept getting worse and worse. For example, on the first day, he opened the car door while I was driving over 55 miles an hour, but I laughed at it, joked that that shouldn't happen, and then child locked the doors. On the second day, it was his constant complaining that we weren't all doing the activities that he wanted to do, specifically that he wanted to play pickleball. I tried to explain that as an adult and without any anger, that we flew thousands of miles and planned this trip specifically to a national park to see this area. We have a separate part of our vacation for games and hanging out just like that. Well, he still pouted and complained. So I had all of us do an extra 1-mile hike for the day. And as a side note, I think I might be the jerk for doing that, but everyone including him actually enjoyed that hike the most. But maybe it was still wrong of me. On the third day, we were all cleaning the house to leave, and I heard him ask my 9-year-old son if he wanted to go wait in the car. My son then told him, "Why, so you don't have to clean? That's messed up." Now, I did not say anything, and I just looked at the two of them. A little bit later, my wife asked him to help the other kids clean up, and he just flat out ignored her and stayed on his iPad. Later that day, we all went to a lake and he was skipping stones, and eventually he ended up skipping them near people. My wife told him to stop and that he needed to either stand on the other side of them or throw them in a different direction. But he argued with her that he didn't need to because he said that he had good aim. But I interjected and I told him that your aunt asked you to, and that should be good enough. Nobody wants rocks thrown near them. He started throwing them in a different direction for about 10 minutes, but then he threw them right near the other people again. So I stopped him and I told him off in a loud voice. I basically said to him, "Your aunt told you not to do something and you did it anyways. Why are you doing that? Do you think it's funny? Do you like me yelling at you in front of other people? Would you like me to force you to go up to that couple and apologize? Do you think people want random rocks thrown near them? Get it together right now." Well, my wife thinks that I'm in the wrong because in her opinion, it's not my place to discipline her cousin's kid. But in my opinion, I'm aggravated because I informed this kid's mom of all these events after they happened, and she did nothing to prevent the escalation. I think this might be a cultural issue as well, as to me, it seems quite normal for any family member to discipline a child. So am I the jerk for correcting my nephew in the way that I did? Because right now, I'm seriously not sure what to do. No, you are not the jerk. This kid was being obnoxious the entire time this trip was happening, and he was literally testing the boundaries of what he could and couldn't do the entire time. And that, in my opinion, absolutely needs to be corrected. He cannot get away with acting like such a delinquent the entire time and expect to just get away with it. Because let's say he did skip those rocks at those people and it hit one of them in the eye or something like that. I guarantee you that the second that happened, that kid's mom is gonna be like, "Well, why weren't you watching him? Why did you let him do that?" And try to pin the blame on you for not being present for her kid's actions. Like, this really would have turned on you immediately, and I don't blame you for stepping in and being like, "Wait a second, we are not doing this." And if anything, it was more about just like self-preservation as opposed to policing what that kid can and cannot do. Because in my opinion, when you are responsible for the care of a child, you are also responsible for the discipline of that child. And if that kid really is going to act up in that way and the mom's not going to do anything about it, then in my opinion, you are fully within your right to put him in his place. An entitled old jerk almost runs me over with his car, but then tries to flip it all on me and basically try to blame me for getting behind his car, despite the fact that he definitely was not looking where he was going. Here's what happened. So every day I take a walk with my dog around the neighborhood to get him outside and get some exercise for myself as well. Sometimes I'll go in the morning on weekends or in the evening during the week when it's a bit cooler outside. Well, this morning I went on my walk and I typically take the same route, so I pass by the same houses. Most are owned by people who are a bit older, and there are some that are a bit younger, but after living in the neighborhood for 5 years, I'm probably half the age of the average. Right at the start, just down the street from my house, a truck pulls into his driveway and I don't really think anything of it. They also pass by me, so they would have seen me on the sidewalk. I had my dog and my friend's dog that I'm dog sitting as well. Usually, if I see someone get in their car in a driveway, I ensure that they see me, or I wait till they back out if they didn't look around before getting in. In this case, I assumed that they were arriving and not going to be backing out again. And sure, it was dumb of me to assume, but it seems pretty obvious to me. I continue walking, and as I'm right behind the truck, they throw it into reverse and I yell to let them know that I'm there. Well, they immediately start yelling at me. They're getting incredibly aggressive. I quickly see they are two older gentlemen with gray beards and looked like they were maybe in their mid-60s or so. I let them know to check their surroundings and look behind them before backing up. They then start swearing and berating me, saying to me that I knew what was happening. You knew. And I'm just like, no, I don't know where you're going at all times. They did apologize after some exchange back and forth, and at this point, I was pretty upset. The apology was multiple of them saying, "We were wrong, you a-hole," with a pretty big emphasis on them saying a-hole. They were driving slowly behind me on the wrong side of the road as I'm trying to walk away. The driver put his truck in park at one point and opened the door and threatened to fight me right then and there. At that point, I wanted no part of the situation. I told him to get back in his vehicle and not approach me ever again. I had 2 dogs, and likely it wouldn't have ended well for him, but I'm not the biggest guy out there, and it would have been 2 guys coming at me at once. But eventually, they turned around and left. I was probably in the wrong for yelling and swearing at them in response to their aggressiveness, and I was not nice in any way after they started yelling at me. me. But I mean, come on, my dog is everything, not even considering my friend's dog and how much he adores me. I was so pissed off. I have backed out of my driveway a couple of times with people close by that I didn't notice, and I would always immediately apologize. It was crazy how quickly they tried to blame me and started getting super aggressive. And you know what? People make mistakes. That's life. But you really just need to own up to it. Luckily, no one got hurt and they stopped when I yelled that I was behind them. But I'm honestly so sick of these entitled neighbors, and I really hope I never deal with them ever again. Yeah, those guys were completely in the wrong. For starters, there is no good excuse for them not looking where they're going. Like, you're on a public sidewalk. They're in a motor vehicle and they have every responsibility to look out for you. And you know what? It almost seems like they pushed it in reverse the second you got there, almost on purpose. Almost as if they try to do it like vindictively to try and like make a point. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but it sounds like they're the kind of people who definitely would try that if given the chance. So you know what? I don't blame you for getting aggressive and swearing at these idiots, because that's exactly what they were. They were being really dumb and almost got you and those dogs hurt. And it would be far too late if they actually injured you or those dogs in some kind of way, because that would have been absolutely tragic. Am I the jerk for being a supposed bridezilla and not inviting to invite my half-siblings to my wedding? Here's what happened. I'm a 25-year-old female and I would be getting married in a few months. We are in the process of getting invites ready, but we hit a snag because my parents, mostly my mom, are upset that I don't want to and wasn't planning on inviting my half-siblings. My mom is the parent that we have in common, and their dad passed away while mom was pregnant with my half-sister, and she met my dad 7 months after her first husband died. They dated and quickly moved in and started helping her with my half-siblings, and they wanted to become a family. I was born within the first year of their marriage, and even though I'm less than 2 years younger than my half-sister, we were never even close, and I wasn't close to my half-brothers either. They didn't like that mom remarried. I also understand that for them it was very fast, so they really didn't adjust to all the changes that happened in those 2 years of their lives, which I can also completely understand. They stuck by each other though, and that included my half-sister. They made sure that she knew that she was their dad's kids and not my dad's, and that I was a half-sister. My mom did a lot to discourage the use of half, and I remember I started saying it pretty young because my half-sibling said it, and she would correct me and correct them as well. My half-siblings never expressed their dislike of me to my face, but their disinterest said a lot. My half-sister wouldn't play with me. She and my half-brothers would talk to me a little, but it was always like them with me and not the four of us together. Even when the boys moved out, my half-sister was distant. My mom and dad would have these family fun days out, but they usually ended with my half-sister screaming that my dad was trying to replace her dad and he needed to leave her alone. The boys would also come home to see her and would take her out. Sometimes they did it while mom was at work and refused to listen to dad saying no. Other times she'd go with them after school, and I was never invited or included. We are all adults now and things have not changed. My half-brothers are married with kids, and I was not invited to their weddings, and I have not even met their kids. My half-sister has 2 kids as well, though she's not married. I saw her oldest once, but didn't get to interact or anything. They talked to mom, but the relationship is somewhat strained. Mom told them that she was disappointed they were so cold to me, and that they refused to even have a friendship with me. Knowing all this though, my parents want me to invite my half-siblings and their families to my wedding. They know there's no chance any of them would say yes, but mom said that I should still invite them, and that I should show them that we are still family. My dad then told me that it was a bridezilla thing to only think of what I want and not think of what the family wants as well. So am I the jerk for not planning on inviting my half-siblings to my wedding? What should I do? Honestly, I kind of see this both ways, but I side more with the original poster than I do with the family. For starters, I can say that yeah, you probably should still like extend the invitation, but in my opinion, I don't blame you for saying no, I'm not gonna do it. These people have absolutely made your life miserable by keeping you out of their lives. They've intentionally distanced themselves from you, and they've basically made it so that you have no connection to them whatsoever. And in my opinion, they had literally years to figure their lives out and try to change that negative attitude towards you, and that alone would give me more than enough justification to be like, no, you're not showing up to my wedding. And also, more to the point, like, why should you have to invite these people, especially after how cold and distant they've been towards you? It doesn't sound like you acted like that. If anything, this sounds like a one-sided thing that they started, because at the end of the day, you did not ask to be born under these circumstances, and you definitely did not ask these people to treat you so poorly. So in my opinion, I think you're completely justified to turn them away and not even invite them, because just like it was mentioned, there's a very high likelihood that that they literally will not care in the slightest. An entitled old customer decides to park his scooter right in front of our double doors and effectively blocks anyone from getting in and out of our back rooms. And I'm honestly so sick of dealing with customers who act this way. Here's what happened. So I work at a popular retail corporation, and I pick up orders for people that ordered online. I have a time limit for these carts, but a lot of times people, usually the older generations, assume that I should move for them. But you know what? They wouldn't have to worry about employees as they're shopping around the store if they didn't take up the entire aisle and walkway. Anyways, in the book section of the store past the aisle is the back wall of the store and the one of two sets of doors to the back room. It is a frequently used door by all employees except for front of store people. When employees have large, wide, heavy, long carts or carts in general, this is the door that is the most used. It's easier to pass through the book aisle than to try and make a sharp turn and try to squeeze through a different aisle. And in fact, the book aisle is wider for this exact reason. Anyways, this old entitled jerk on an electric scooter decides that he should park his scooter right in the aisle and just sit and talk on speakerphone for over 30 minutes. My friend, the electronics employee, tried to gently herd the man out of the aisle by asking if he needed any kind of help, but was instead met with a glare and then followed by the lead stare. Several people were stuck pushing through the small aisles with huge carts and unwieldy items, and customers were also struggling to get by this man. He wasn't even talking about shopping or what they needed from the store, but instead he was just having a casual conversation. So I honestly can't understand why he decided to park his cart right in front of the giant swinging doors that people are constantly going in and out of. There was also a perfectly large sort of empty walkway where he could have stopped his scooter and minimized the amount of space and items that he was blocking. But I'm honestly so sick of customers that act like this because they are some of the worst people to deal with in the world. Yeah, that sounds incredibly frustrating, and it sounds like a situation where like, okay buddy, I think you need to read the room. I'm pretty sure all the foot traffic around these double doors should have been enough evidence for this guy to be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't park my electric scooter right here. Like, you seriously have to lack a significant amount of self-awareness to not catch on that, hey, maybe I'm in the way. Maybe I'm the problem in this situation. So truly, I know exactly where the original poster is coming from, because entitled and selfish customers who act this way truly are absolutely the worst. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that she literally causes all of her own problems and then has the audacity to try and complain about it when she knows that she's the one that did it? Because right now she's saying that I lack empathy and that I'm abandoning her. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 27-year-old female, and I have a close friend who we will call Jane, who is constantly complaining to me about the same few things that are completely changeable. She'll beg for my advice, I will give it to her, and then she'll do the exact same things again and continue to complain about them. It got to the point where it honestly seemed like Jane was doing these things to have a reason to complain. So I eventually stopped giving her advice, but would still just let her vent. Recently, Jane switched jobs after years of complaining about her old one and how she felt underpaid and underappreciated, which I do agree that she was. So I helped her get a new job at my old place of employment with a significantly better salary. My old boss had left, but I was still in touch with one of my old coworkers, who we will call Sarah, who told me to let Jane know that the new boss will sometimes call employees after hours, but they are in no way legally obligated to answer and wouldn't be penalized for not taking a call. Sarah said that neither she nor any of the other coworkers have ever answered a single call, and to tell Jane to do the same so that he doesn't keep bothering her. I explained this to Jane before she got the job and asked if she was sure that she wanted to take it, knowing that the boss might try to call her after clocking out, but that she in no way was responsible for picking up. She said she understood and still wanted the job. So I set up an interview for her and she ended up getting the job. Well, a month in, Jane started complaining to me that the boss keeps calling her, requesting things during off-work hours. But I told her that both Sarah and I had warned her not to pick up so that she wouldn't keep being bothered by him, and asked why she picked up anyways. She scoffed and said, because I'm a good employee, so why wouldn't I pick up? She then continued to complain about how annoying it was to work at a place where people condone that, and how she should have just stayed at her old job. And at this point, this is where I might be the jerk. I got very upset at that comment because I worked so hard to secure an interview for her. So I said to her, actually, the only person condoning that is you. You knew before taking this job that the boss might try that, and you were warned to just ignore it but chose not to. And now you're complaining about something you don't actually have to do? You always act helpless, and like all these situations just unfairly happen to you, but you're actually causing causing more of your misery yourself, and I just can't help you anymore. I ended up going home while Jane texted me saying she couldn't believe my lack of empathy and abandonment when I knew that she had a rough life. I told her that she knew I also had a very hard life, but I am now an adult who takes responsibility for my problems, and that she should do the same. One of our other friends told me that Jane was really hurt by what I said, and that I was really harsh and I should have gone easier on her. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk at all, because it sounds like Jane literally is the master of her own problems. Like seriously, let's look at exactly what happened in this story. She was well informed to the fact that her boss might try to call her after hours, but now she's trying to play dumb and be like, wow, I can't believe this is happening, almost as if she didn't know about this ahead of time. But it's like, yes, you absolutely did know about this. She was literally informed by the original poster who was told by Sarah. So it's honestly complete nonsense that she's not only welcoming this problem in her life, but then complaining about it as if nobody told her. So no, you're definitely not the jerk for putting this lady in her place, because the way she's acting, in my opinion, is super annoying. My entitled Karen aunt desperately tries to offend me by saying awful things to me about my life, but instead of reacting in the way she wanted me to react, I decided to give her the cold shoulder and say nothing, resulting in my aunt going into a fit of rage in a way that I've honestly never seen before in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so my aunt is the stereotypical American Karen. At the last family dinner, I showed up with my baby, and my aunt pointed out that I'll be sitting in a random corner chair next to the garage door and the garbage can, but the baby can stay in the living room. But I decide to show no reaction and just say, okay. After I make sure my baby is all good in the living room and that he's being watched, I grab a plate and I take my seat. My aunt then asks me if I know why I'm sitting there and how I'm going to handle the holiday season sitting there. But I just shrug and say, well, I guess I'll just suffer in silence. And I tell her that it's her house, so she gets to decide what kind of hostess she wants to be. And then I just start talking to my uncle. Well, my aunt gets upset and starts yelling at me. She said to me, "You had a baby out of wedlock and you refused to get married. That is an absolutely disgusting way to live. You and your boy toy have been shacking up and doing all kinds of substances for over a decade. And now you've brought a baby into the world. You should be ashamed of yourself. If I was you, I'd be too embarrassed to keep living this way, especially since he's never here. I would be extremely disgusted with myself if I knew someone thought of me the way I think of you right now. I am beyond shocked when I see photos that you post that you're actually going out with a baby and no wedding ring. Just absolutely shocked." She then went on to say how back in her day, it was extremely shameful to have a baby out of wedlock, and that she prays the country gets back on track and morals go back to what they were. Well, the entire time, I'm just calmly eating, and after her yelling, I explained that I can get up from the seat whenever I want. Now, my husband and I married per our culture, which is the same one that she married into, by the way, and when we go to his village, we are seen as husband and wife, and just because we didn't get an American license and get married in a church, that doesn't make it null and void. Now, as for the substances that she's referring to, we smoked the herb back in our 20s. We're currently in our mid-30s, so we are very far away from being any kind of addict, and the reason why he doesn't go to a lot of family dinners is because he works a lot of weekends and later shifts. But in all honesty, it's because he really dislikes that a lot of my entitled relatives continuously ask the same offensive questions every time they see him, and they're also always so shocked when they find someone so dark is more educated than them and speaks multiple languages. So he chooses to stay home for most family events. After the exchange, I went to go sit with my baby and socialize with my cousins. And the rest of the night, several of my old entitled relatives kept approaching me and telling me how I disrespected my aunt and why I should apologize and that I was acting very offensive. Well, the apology they demanded never happened, and I told them that if she is that offended, I can leave her house and she can let me know when I'm allowed back in. Now, granted, she is allowed her opinions, and she's had almost 8 months since the baby was born to get a handle on her emotions. But if my presence is that unwanted, then I can leave, because I'm not apologizing for living life outside of what she deems as acceptable. Wow, this is a fantastic example of someone getting offended over literally nothing. For starters, she is absolutely a massive jerk. Your aunt was out of line for talking the way that she was towards you, and the things that she was saying were just so disgusting. But also, she literally intentionally ostracized you from the family. Like seriously, what is wrong with this lady? How can she even begin to say, "Oh yeah, we're family," while also in the same sentence saying all these horrible things? But I also love the fact that she tried so desperately to get under your skin, but was completely unsuccessful. And in fact, because you said nothing and you just sat there and said, okay, whatever, she somehow got more angry and decided to go on this weird tirade. And for your relatives to be like, wow, what you did was really offensive, that shows to me how delusional these people really are and how they seriously have bought into what your aunt is saying about you and your husband. So honestly, I hope you never have to deal with your aunt ever again, and I really hope you reconsider going to her house in the first place, because the way she treated you was completely unacceptable, and you do not deserve that in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for refusing to help my sister's baby in the middle of the night simply because it's not my child and I did not choose to have this kid in my life? Here's what happened. I'm a 21-year-old female and I'm also a college student who lives with my family still. Last year, my family moved into a slightly smaller house, and because my sister and I were gone all the time anyways, with me at college and her with her work and staying at her boyfriend's house, we agreed that we'd share the biggest bedroom. And it wasn't going to be a long-term thing, especially since we're both getting to the age where it's time to fly the coop. I would have done it by now, but I am in nursing school and I can't juggle a full-time job to support myself simultaneously. Now, it wasn't a big deal, especially since we'd really only have to occasionally be in there together during the summertime. However, in the fall, my sister ended up getting pregnant with her boyfriend. She said her and the boyfriend were going to figure it out, and it honestly is pretty complicated since he still lives with his mom, and my sister and her boyfriend live about an hour apart. His mom wanted her to move in because they have the space for her and the baby, but his mom smokes in the house, so it wasn't a viable option. So they spent months trying to figure it out, but neither of them were willing to compromise and move and get an apartment in one city or the other. That is, until literally a week before she was scheduled to be induced. My sister agreed that she'd be willing to move to his city and get an apartment there together. However, that week came quickly and the baby was born. Well, it's been a month later and she still lives here, and he still lives an hour away and only comes around to see them maybe 3 days a week. And during that time, I'm expected to get out of my own bedroom and crash on the couch, which is so ridiculous to me. But when he's not here, my sister gets so unbelievably angry at me for not getting up at 1 in the morning to feed and change her child. She claims that it's selfish of me not to, since she hardly gets sleep as it is, and it would help her out a lot. I've done it a handful of times, but it exhausts me, and I remember that I am young and childless. I'll help during the day, but I am not losing my sleep, especially when I wasn't the one who decided to have a child while ill-prepared. She's angry at me for it, which I can kind of understand because we are her support system, but I shouldn't have to change more of my life than the baby's father does. And it seems like my generosity is being taken advantage of because neither of them seem to be in a rush to get out in the slightest. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? You are not the jerk in the slightest, and honestly, it is very frustrating that they are still living there. Seriously, are they not gonna move on and find an apartment or what? You are literally allowing her to stay in your bedroom, and this is all with a baby that, guess what, is not yours. And you said it yourself, you're in the middle of nursing school. You can't just drop what you're doing at 1 in the morning and take care of her baby. How is that fair for you in the slightest? The better solution here is for her to move out and move in with her boyfriend. Then they can both work together for taking care of this kid, because again, it's not your kid. And the fact that no one else in your family is being like, hey, I'll help out, let me step up and help out the baby. The fact that none of that is happening is really disturbing, especially since it sounds like your parents are living there. So it makes me question, wait a second, where are these people? Why are they not coming into the bedroom or taking the baby off your sister's hands just to try and help out in some kind of way? Because I think you might be right. I think your generosity is being taken advantage of, and that is truly depressing to see. Because if you wanted to, you really could sharpen up this timeline and be like, okay, it's time for you to hit the road and get another place to live. And the fact that you're in nursing school and still trying to help out as much as you can, in my opinion, shows how selfish your sister is truly being right now. And I get it, she has a baby, so she's very busy. But where is the boyfriend trying to find an apartment or something? I understand that the sister can't do it, but he absolutely can do it. And it must be nice for him to not have to be around the kid except for 3 days a week? Meanwhile, you're stuck there in his place trying to figure things out. So no, you are not the jerk for putting up some kind of boundary with your sister, because the way she's acting, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. An entitled old jerk demands that he should be the one to free a woman trapped in a bathroom. But instead of actually helping to get the door open, this guy stalls for nearly 40 minutes, preventing anybody else from helping out and getting this broken door opened. And I've honestly never seen anything more cringeworthy cringeworthy and embarrassing in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, this happened a few years ago at a housewarming party, and to this day, it is still one of the most entitled things I've ever witnessed in my life. A friend's mom had just purchased a home and hosted a small gathering to celebrate. Among the guests were the host's younger sister, who was maybe in their 40s, and the host's male coworker, who was maybe in his 60s. The older coworker showed up early, and he was already noticeably drunk by the time other people started arriving. When the sister arrived, this guy was smitten with her, and he immediately started dropping cheesy pickup lines. She was clearly uninterested and uncomfortable, but did her best to be polite and not embarrass or offend him. He was oblivious to the social cues while continuing his creepy act. After about half an hour of tolerating him, she excused herself to use the restroom, and this is where things got really interesting. A few minutes passed and we heard someone knocking and shouting. The bathroom door lock was jammed, and the sister could not get out, which was just the hero opportunity that this entitled weirdo was waiting for. He made a beeline for the door and started forcefully twisting away at the knob, but it wasn't budging. In spite of his ineffective attempts, he wasn't letting anyone else get near the door and try and open it. He just stood there with his hands on the knob while insisting that he would rescue her, and also implying that she would owe him once he did. This went on for over 40 minutes, and he even wanted someone to bring him a chair so he could sit down while fighting with the lock, which thankfully nobody did. Now, as luck would have it, his earlier indulgence caught up with him and he had to go to the bathroom. The other bathroom was upstairs, and he reluctantly stepped away to relieve himself, but not before reassuring the trapped sister that he'd be right back to rescue her, and also insisting that no one else attempt to open the door, as we don't know what we're doing and we would just make things worse. Once this guy was out of the way, my friend and I had the door open in under a minute. It turns out the hinges were a bit loose, allowing the door to sag enough to bind the latch. So by lifting the knob while turning, it opened right up. Well, this guy returned just in time to see the free sister hugging and thanking my friend and I for getting the door open. And when he saw this, he was so pissed off. He said to us, "I told you not to do anything until I got back," as if he was somehow making any progress. My friend's mom, being the good-humored saint that she is, offered to get herself trapped so that he could rescue her. Well, the laughter at his expense was way too much for his fragile ego, so he left very abruptly, and the rest of us had a great time rehashing the entire fiasco. Wow, that guy's a massive weirdo. Like, seriously, why was he acting so incredibly entitled towards getting this lady out of the bathroom? It's bad enough that he didn't notice that she definitely did not like him, but also the fact that he kept her in there for literally 40 minutes, all while trying to like pull on the door and be like, "It's okay, I'll save you." Like, that really is some crazy behavior, and honestly, I hope you never have to deal with this guy ever again. Am I the jerk for not sharing my location with my girlfriend through my phone, all because I feel like it's only going to cause us problems? Because right now she is very upset with me for saying no, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my girlfriend and I are 26 years old, and we've been together for about 4 months now, but we've been talking for over a year and a half, and we did that because we wanted to take things slow. Well, we are 4 months into officially being a couple, and it's honestly been great. There's proper communication, we don't argue, and we only have positive discussions to eliminate possible or present problems, and we are also very honest with one another. Yesterday, she told me that she wanted me to enable Find My iPhone and add her as a friend so she could see my location 24/7. Now, I've never had this application enabled or turned it on and even shared it with anybody, and I don't have Snapchat with SnapMap to track location, so the idea of someone having access to my location wasn't something I had even considered or ever experienced before. I told her that I don't know if sharing my 24/7 location with her is something that I'd want to do. She asked me why and if I had something to hide, but I told her of course not, but I just never considered it, and I think that it can somewhat cause paranoia in a sense, because it can lead to cyclically and obsessively checking your partner's location if they, for example, don't reply for an hour. She then got angry with me and told me that exactly for that reason, we should have location shared so that she or I won't worry if the other person is not replying. But I said to her, what if I don't reply for an hour and you check my location, but I'm just at home possibly cleaning or sleeping, just as an example? Would that not cause unnecessary paranoia because you assume that I should be able to reply because I'm at home, but you don't know that I'm sleeping or doing something else? Now, it may have been a bad example, but my point honestly still stands. I also said that I always tell her where I'm going or what I'm doing before I go to said place or do said thing. So that honestly should be enough. She said that I was being crazy and that if I really was honest with her, I would share my location. I told her that the fact that she wants my location out of fear for me not being honest is a bad sign, and that it's offensive that she assumes I would lie to her and not tell her where I am. But she said that I was being offensive towards her for not sharing it with her. I told her I'm not going to share my location because I know that it can lead to a lot of misunderstandings and misconceptions in the future, and that I wasn't going to let her coerce me into sharing it with her, and that if she didn't believe me and needed it to trust me, then maybe we should have a talk to reevaluate our trust. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because it really seems like your girlfriend is going way beyond what's like even appropriate in my opinion. Like seriously, she wants to know your location 24/7, like at all times exactly where you're at. Like that can work for some people, but the way she's wording it and saying it, in my opinion, just seems really weird. Almost as if she just innately doesn't trust you. And the fact that she's like, oh, what do you have to hide? Like that kind of accusatory tone, in my opinion, is not a good sign, and that is like an immediate red flag that I noticed when I was reading through this story. So no, I don't think you're the jerk for setting up some kind of boundary, because clearly this is something that you are definitely not comfortable with. Would I be the jerk if I refused to buy a tacky painting that my sister-in-law made of my family without my permission or request? Because right now she is very offended that I've turned her down, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 52-year-old female, and this situation concerns my husband's brother, who we will call Drew, and his wife of 5 years, who we will call Suzanne. Drew supports Suzanne on his income while she focuses on her dream of being an artist. She makes paintings of people and animals and has a website where she advertises her work for sale. Now, privately, I don't think her art is very good. It's absolutely better than what I could do, but it doesn't look professional, if you know what I mean. My husband feels the same, so we have not opted to purchase any of her art, despite her dropping hints here and there about it. The art on her site is priced in the range of $3,000 to $5,000. I realize that labor and cost of materials must be taken into account, but given the quality, those prices seem outrageous to me. I suspect she's not making regular sales because she's started making portraits of friends, family, or pets as a surprise, and usually said family and friends end up feeling obligated to buy the painting as a courtesy. And unfortunately, my husband and I were the latest victims of this sales tactic. My son recently proposed to his girlfriend, and we took the two of them, his girlfriend's parents, and our daughter out to a fancy dinner to celebrate. Both of my kids posted pictures from dinner on social media, and without telling anybody, Suzanne decided to make a painting of one of these pictures of everyone smiling for the camera. She then revealed the big surprise at a party that she and Drew hosted 2 weeks ago. The painting is a whopping 40 by 58, and I honestly think it's awful and really tacky. I told Suzanne that it was sweet of her to commemorate such a special moment in our family, but I carefully avoided saying anything about liking it. But as I feared, she kept dropping hints throughout the party about how we can buy it as a wedding gift, and she would be happy to give us a big discount off what she would charge someone else. Because seriously, who else would buy it? Well, I politely dodged these hints, and she was clearly disappointed. Over the weekend, Drew reached out to my husband to say that Suzanne feels hurt that we never made an offer. He said it's become obvious as the years go by that we've never purchased one of her pieces, even though we have the means to do so, and it would mean a lot to them if we buy the painting. Her original asking price was $2,500, and Drew said he'll reduce it further to $1,900. But here's the thing, it is not about the money, it's the principle of the thing. I feel like I'm being strong-armed into paying for something I never asked for, don't like, and don't have any space for in my house. I asked, and my son and his fiance don't want it. My husband thinks that we should just buy it to keep the peace in the family and avoid some kind of potential rift with Suzanne and Drew. He also says that the way I talk makes me sound like a snob, even though I would never share these opinions with anyone I know but him. So would I be the jerk if I stood my ground and refused to buy this painting? What should I do? Okay, I've got to be completely honest here. Suzanne and Drew sound like absolute nightmare individuals. Seriously, what are they thinking here? They're just gonna make paintings for people and then try to guilt trip them into buying it for thousands of dollars? You did not ask for this tacky gift, and you are definitely not under any obligation to buy it from these people. Like, what is wrong with these people? This is so uncalled for. The fact that she would make this and be like, oh, isn't this so nice? You should totally buy it. And then when you don't fork over the money, she's like, wow, I can't believe they bought it. I'm so offended. But it's like, lady, nobody wanted this. You made this and then just expected people to buy it. That is so stupid and weird. Like, honestly, I can't believe someone would do that to you guys. She must have a really bad business if her only way of making sales is basically by trying to like force her art on people. This whole situation, in my opinion, is absurd. So obviously, no, you are not the jerk. And if anything, Drew and Suzanne are completely out of line for the way, they're literally trying to force you to buy this stupid art. Would I be the jerk for not paying back my ex's mom after she bought me first-class tickets to Hawaii for a trip that I was no longer going on? Here's what happened. I'm a 34-year-old male, and my ex broke up with me 3 weeks ago. Prior to this, her mom had bought me and a bunch of other people first-class Delta tickets via some Costco travel package to Hawaii so that she could show her appreciation for us helping her move into their house. Now, I was unavailable when they called me to ask me if they should because I was working. Well, they later told me, and I was grateful for the gift. I've never flown first class, so I agreed to go. I was looking forward to this trip with my girlfriend, her mom, and their 2 family friends. Then my ex broke up with me on July 1st. I was so hurt, and she did it by text message too. We had been together for 10 months. 2 weeks into the breakup, her mom texted me and my ex in the group chat. She said that due to the situation, I had been removed from our Hawaii trip in December, and unfortunately, due to laws and contracts, she was unable to get refunded the over $2,000 that she paid. She then said that I have that amount in credit through Delta and that she would like a refund as soon as possible. She said that once she received the funds, I will be provided the confirmation number to secure my flight of choice, while also saying that I had a year to use it up. It was crazy timing because I was planning on reaching out to my ex that day, and I ended up reaching out to my ex 2 days later, and I ignored the text from her mom. Well, today we had a conversation at Starbucks. I apologized for things that I felt I did wrong, and things were going seemingly well until we were leaving. My ex thinks that I should make it right and reimburse my mom the $2,000 for the tickets, but I feel it was a gift that I had no control over and not something that I would have normally bought for myself. She says that because they put the ticket in my name, that credit belongs to me, and that I should make it right and just pay for it. So would I be the jerk for not paying for this airplane ticket? What should I do? No, you would not be the jerk by not paying these people back, because they're not trying to do you a favor by getting you this confirmation number and all these credits. They're literally just trying to get their money back. They're trying to get a refund because airlines suck and they don't give refunds. So if my ex broke up with me regardless of whatever trip was going on, there's no way on earth I would ever pay that back, because that, in my opinion, is incredibly toxic, and you do not need that kind of energy in your life in the slightest. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, make sure to subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.